Primal Fear is a mod known for its creatures from hell, godlike bosses, and dodos that explode if you look at them funny. I just made it hard mode. Flies are disabled, bosses are stronger, more dinos are spawning, and every map has been fused into one. I have 100 days to fight through this mod pack of pain, even having to beat challenges along the way. The first of which is to beat a vanilla boss by day 25, something most players take hundreds of days to do. So welcome to the most insane Primal Fear journey you have seen yet. This is no longer Primal Fear. This is Primal Pain. Starting off rubbing my forearm, once again I took a moment to gain my bearings. Alright guys, it's time to primal my fear all over the place. Let's do this. And starting off like every other adventure, I began gathering basic resources, spotting a giant purple flying dino. That is a fabled tropio. I am pretty sure they are aggressive, so I chose to round the other way. Gaining some levels, I learned the first few basic game grabs, including the stone hatchet and the primal spear. Tools that'll help me a lot in this playthrough, and of course, I needed thatch and wood. But without a tool to use, I had to resort to punching a tree, crafting a pick once I'd collected enough resources, and using the pick I bashed a rock to gain flint and stone to craft a hatchet. Basic tools collected, so I used the hatchet to gain some early crystal from the extinction light posts around the area. Glowing carcanos? No, it's not glowing. Something else must have made it glow. Either way, I don't want to get close to that. It will mess me up. And watching from a distance as a gacha fought off some spooters. Good job, Mr. Gacha. Mrs. Gacha. So I harvested the corpse for chitin and raw meat. One unintended benefit of spawning in the extinction area of the island is enforcers will fight back on aggressive dinos such as Aranios and take them out, so I don't have to worry. And then with my hunger and thirst dropping, I used what some would call the beach bob berry trick, placing a Mar, Azul, and Tinto berries into my hotbar and holding the corresponding numbers as I consumed the stacks of berries to refill my hunger and thirst bars. That's a fabled gacha. Fabled gacha can drop some really nice stuff from their crystals. Maybe I'll get some gachas later on, but for now, I needed more water. So heading to the nearby river, I cautiously entered just enough to quench my thirst. I just need water, please don't touch me, Mr. Sharky. And then once I had my fill, I left the water and the sharks inside. I think this is the most chilled start I have ever had on Primal Fear. It feels weird. I think I just got lucky with choosing the best spawn region right off the bat. Usually I have to try a couple of them until I find one where you just don't insta-die. As yeah, I'm actually playing on the island, but this is the island with every single other map spawned onto it. So, knowing I'd need some shelter, I learned the engrams for thatch structures, began collecting the resources needed, and crafted myself a thatch starter base. Okay, well, seeing as you can't tame flyers in Primal Fear hard mode, which I have dubbed Primal Pain, I am going to need to figure out a different way to get around the map. Fortunately, this mod pack, it does have the Fjordor teleportation. So that is one way to get around. However, I'll be teleporting into the unknown, not knowing what is waiting for me when I get there. So it's a bit of a risk. Aside from wanting to get around, the first way to progress in Primal Fear is you need to get yourself and tame some dodos that they can start generating eggs for you. There doesn't seem to be any dodos in this area, which means I'm probably going to have to go do some traveling, and soon. Before I do that though, I want to get some levels, get some equipment. It's not going to save me, but it will make me feel better about myself, and that's important too. And then as I was gathering more resources, a gacha decided it didn't like me doing that, so it swatted me away. And then deciding to tame the gacha, I dropped some stone for it to eat. Cracking a crystal order dropped as I gained my first bit of oil. I'm not sure how many people can say they first tame as a gacha, but I'm gonna call you Bish. Because... Gotcha, bitch! And then bringing Bish to base, I parked it just outside before completing my starter hut. The thatch won't protect me from anything that's actually mad at me, but they'll be less likely to see me, so building is also just good experience. And then ending off day one by changing my door location so that I could actually enter the base. And knowing the best structure to craft early on to level up was cooking pots, I went out to gather stone to begin crafting them en masse for XP. Crafting up the first round of them as I spotted a PT land near me. This is probably my only chance to get hide if I can knock out this pteranodon before it flies away with my primal spear. I thought they were reusable. Whoops. And then watching as the PT just flew off, I went back to leveling up. Oh yeah, look at that, so many levels. And pumping my levels into movement speed, I crafted up my Nat Chibi, equipping it and naming it Lil Nat. Hey little guy, how are you doing? Welcome back to the team. And my official Chibi, isn't he just so cute? If you don't know, you too can use it by using the content creator Chibi mod. And now that Lil Nat is with me, I recycled the cooking pot by placing and destroying them. Here's the thing, I can't even make a smithy until I get some hide. So next mission is definitely murder. And finding a Pelagornis, I attempted to kill it, but just like the PT earlier, it flew off. Come back! Let me murder you! So running around, I collected some gacha crystals before running into a trilobite. See, normally you would be really important to find so that I could harvest your chitin to make a pteranodon saddle. But with no flyers, you are actually fairly useless to me. And making my way further as I spotted a dark parrot. Definitely not ready to mess with that. So I began fighting a gacha instead. Stab him in the butt. No, come back. Let me murder you. And once the gacha came back to shore after getting bit by the sharks, I continued to poke it with my spears. What the f is going on with this thing's AI?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I'm sorry. And then killing the gacha harvested its corpse for the hide I'd need for smithy. I feel so bad. I'm sorry, little guy. Your hide will go a long way. 500 hide, that should last me a while. And returning to base, I crafted some beds before karma struck. Karma's here! Karma! Ah! The karma arrived! I shouldn't have killed the gacha! Well, first death. Wouldn't be Primal Fear without the first one of those. Cheers, boys. And then as I respawned, I saw that Bish died to a toxic tarantula. However, for what it's worth, it's good I've got giant spiders now because I'm gonna need the preparation for when I take on Grounded 2. So make sure you subscribe if you want to see that. And after collecting my inventory from the gravestone, I began to look for a safer base location. I think I'm gonna try and get up there. And finding a platform off of the ground, I began crafting some ladders to get up there, ending the day by making myself a parachute to save me if I fell. Attempt number 1 to get to the top of the platform, of course I fell. But luckily I made the parachute, so I floated down to safety. Climbing back up the ladders as I reached the top, jumped and activated my parachute and floated to the platform. As I began harvesting resources to make a base, my hatchet broke. I didn't bring any flint. So I placed down the foundations for what would be my base, adding a wooden hatch frame so I could build a ladder down to the ground. While placing the ladders down, I slipped, fell, and without a parachute, died to fall damage. Respawning, I was immediately targeted by some tarantulas, so I led them over to an enforcer. Spiders won, oh no. So I ran away collecting a bit of flint before rushing up my ladder to safety. Once up to base, I made some more ladders and began carefully placing them as I climbed down. They're just standing there, staring at me, menacingly. But then as I got closer to the bottom, the spiders webbed me, so I just went back up to the top. Destroying one of the thatch foundations so I could use the fiber to craft some storages, and jumping from base as I parachuted down to go collect more resources. Back at base, I learned the forge and smithy engrams, then began farming resources to upgrade my thatch foundations to wood. Okay, or at least I'm starting to make a little bit of progress. I've got a safe spot. I don't have any tames anymore. Rest in peace, Bish. but I should be able to make this work. Before I go any further, I am going to christen this place with a bed. So now at least I can respawn up here. Safe from danger. I hope. What the heck is that? Okay, I want to go get some dodos. Let me harvest some crystal. I should be able to get crystal from these lights. There we go. And using the crystal to craft some soul balls so I can put my dodos that I tame into my pockets. Wait, I got hide. Let's make one of these. And then learning the super spyglass engram. Never mind, I don't have cement and pesto ingots. I instead crafted a basic spyglass so I could at least see what the creatures are from a distance. And then running up the beach, I finally found some dodos. Knocking out a breeding pair, I began collecting berries to feed to them, and shoving the berries into the dodos the male tamed up, so I balled it up and was waiting for the female to finish taming. But once it tamed up, I got attacked by an alpha dodo, sacrificing myself to protect my dodos as I inevitably died. Well, that could have gone better. I probably should go make up some boilers so I can take out that dodo. I respawned below my base, picked up the bed and foundation, and headed up to craft some parachutes and boilers. Needing thatch, I began punching a nearby tree to make a pick, and once the tools were crafted, I gathered the resources and crafted a new parachute and some more boilers before heading back to collect my gravestone. That is a celestial orgy, I think. And arriving at the beach where the alpha dodo was guarding my grave, I threw a bowler and began stabbing it. Unfortunately, the dodo broke out before I could kill it, and with a single bite, peck, it killed me. Respawning once again, I made another parachute, glided over the beach where I led the dodo away from my gravestone, and once far enough, I ran back to collect my inventory. Knocking out a vanilla dodo, I began farming resources for more primal spheres, and while collecting berries, I dropped some into the sleeping bird so they could tame up. Boarding them up once they're completed before I headed back to base where I tossed out my dodos, naming them Dodomada and Dodotic after my friends at the nest. Heading out to collect some stone and other resources, I decided to take the fast way down, but I ended up not pulling the parachute quick enough as I went splat. After respawning and collecting gear, I began to harvest more resources, and then returning to base, I crafted and placed down some forges where I started to smelt down some metal. Starting off day 5 with a quick fall to my death, I went to go gather some metal to fill my forges, and once back at base and with some metal smelted ready, I crafted myself a smithy. Once placed, I used it to craft some metal tools. Welcome to the Metal Age, baby. And equipping my new metal pick and hatchet, I began harvesting the surrounding light posts for crystal. With the crystal gathered, I made myself a primal smithy, and this is where I'll be able to craft all things Primal Fear, including all of the tiers of kibble. As in order to tame creatures in Primal Fear, you need to collect eggs of the tier below to create the kibble. Vanilla eggs create toxic kibble, toxic eggs create alpha kibble, alpha eggs make elemental kibble, and so on and so forth. Now in this mod pack there's the additional tier of Fae, which is on the same tier as Celestial and Demonic, which I'll have to explore once I get to that point, but for now I shall begin working up the tiers, learning the toxic kibble engram as I made myself a new mortar and pestle, and making some cementing paste before crafting myself a crossbow and a super spyglass. Now, usually in Primal Fear I would end up using something like the awesome spyglass, but this is Primal Fear hard mode. That's too overpowered, so instead I get this. The only information I get to see about a creature is how much health it has.
Oh my god, no dude. You're really doing that to yourself.
And the rules of this playthrough, if I haven't gone over them yet, are no flyers, wild dinos' health and damage are increased so bosses will be harder to fight, spawns are increased so there are more dinos around the map, and probably one of the worst of all, no awesome spyglass. Oh, and also the crosshair's disabled. So in order to aim, you'll have to use the sights of the weapon you're firing. I made myself a campfire in the morning of day 6, using it to cook up some meat to fill my belly before heading out to collect more stone and flint. With the stone collected, I began laying the pipework down so I could have water up at my base. I swear these trilobites are taunting me, because usually when doing a playthrough, I can never find them to kill them for chitin to make like a pteranodon saddle. And now that I don't need them, because I don't need to make like a PT saddle, I just see them like slowly crawling past me, and I'm like, you. And then collecting one final pipe, I now had fresh water at base. Now that I had water, I needed a place for a farm. So I began creating a farming area by placing down some wooden foundations. I need to go find a red drop right now, get a crop plot blueprint. The one time it's actually useful. So in order to gain the one level I needed to be able to make large crop plots, I crafted up some of my chibis as they actually give a good source of XP. Learning the engrams for the large crop plots, I crafted them and placed them down before bringing over the pipeline to water them. Okay, so I want to go out and get myself a basic tame. 41k torpor. I'm not taming a brachy. And a vanilla trike. See if I can get you. That'd be good. So let's go get ourselves some narcotics so that I can make some trank arrows. And as I was exploring the area around base, looking for a creature to tame, as I came across a box. Whose box is this? Underachievers. Okay, so this is just one of the patrons playing on the server. So if you're wanting to support me further, every time I'm able to do a playthrough and record on a server, patrons will have access to it. So maybe we can run into them at a later stage. So making my way to the river, off in the distance I saw it. There's a demonic parasaur. Arguably one of the most scary and powerful creatures in Primal Fear. With 1.1 million health and a lot of damage if he gets pissed at anything. So returning to base empty-handed, I made sure my dodos were full of berries before making up some narcotics and stone arrows. Making some trank arrows by combining them, I headed back out to find something to tame. Take out the toxic dodo first. I killed the green dodo, harvesting it for its hide before knocking out and killing a compy. Once the aggressive nuisances were taken care of, I turned my attention to the parasaur I wanted. Boloing it, I began shooting it full of sleepy time arrows. Once it knocked out, I began collecting measure berries from the nearby bushes, stopping by the parasaur to shove some berries inside as I continued harvesting bushes when I noticed a celestial aloe. Celestial aloe. One of the most annoying things to run into against when you're flying past on a flyer, because they can just attack super high up into the air. That would be a problem for us because we will only be on ground where it can just bite us instead. I don't think I've thought this challenge through. I might be beginning to regret my decisions. And while waiting for the parasaur to tame up, I decided to knock out and tame some more dodos for egg layers, as more egg layers equals more eggs for kibble. Once the dodos and parasaur tamed up, I boiled them up before heading back to base. I don't get an explorer note, what? So back at base, I tossed out my new dodos, naming them Dodo Bits and Dodavity before attempting to craft a parasaur saddle. I'm short one hide to make a saddle for my parasaur. So I began breeding my dodos, and while I had the explorer note buff, I crafted some more chibis to take advantage of it. Once the fertilized dodo eggs were laid, I collected them and tossed them out to hatch away from the parents. Okay, sorry little ones, I need you for your hide. Unfortunately for me, I attempted to harvest the dodos a little too early. So realizing I had to let them raise up before slaughtering them, I bred another round of baby dodos, taking them on a walk to imprint them as I tested a juvenile but still didn't give me what I needed. So instead I balled up the remaining baby dodos. One fortunate thing is the soul balls allow creatures to raise up inside of them. So by putting them into a soul ball, they will slowly get ready to be mature. So that's a much safer way to get them to raise up without having to worry about food and stuff. I really just want this hide so that I can make a saddle for my parasaur so that I can go and harvest berries and bushes and stuff to make even more narcotics. Because mainly what I need to harvest the berries for is I want to get all of the crops so that I can start to farm to make the kibbles I'm going to need. Because I have to fight a vanilla boss by day 25. If I don't, I immediately fail and I have to restart. Once the dodos were adults, I made sure to throw them out and proceeded to butcher them on the foundation in order to try and get one single piece of hide. Once that was all dealt with, I made a saddle for my parasaur and went out to spend the rest of the day harvesting every single bush in the area. Once I had a really decent supply of berries in the morning, I headed back to base where, unfortunately, I had gotten the one seed I needed, which was rock carrots, in order to make the first tier of kibble, toxic kibble. So I'd at least be able to progress even if I wouldn't be able to progress further than that just yet. So planting my rock carrot seeds, I spent some time at base, throwing all of the narco berries into my mortar and pestle to begin crafting, while I dumped everything else and fertilized the rock carrots with the dodo poop. Luckily for me, the dodo poop was enough to grow my first few bits of carrots, which allowed me to make my very first piece of toxic kibble. Needing some spoiled meat, I split a stack of raw meat just as the spoil timer was about to finish to get a bunch quickly, before crafting up even more parachutes. And then with my fresh supply of kibble and trank arrows, next I went to head off to the beach to see if there was any toxic dodos to tame, to begin farming the next tier of eggs I would need to make the alpha kibble. And that's when I remembered there was a use for me to kill the trilobites. You see, if I wanted to craft a dino storage terminal which will increase my passive egg generation, I needed oil. Easiest way to get oil in the early game, pray to the RNG gods that you get some when you kill a trilobites. So harvesting everyone I could find, I was praying to the RNG gods for just a smidge of oil. Come on, oil. 12 oil. I think that's enough. I think I only needed 7 oil. Heading back to base, I saw a gacha, which reminded me that they could potentially drop the resources I'd need from their crystals. See, gachas have a really cool mechanic, that if you feed them anything, and most people use stone, they'll eat it and produce these crystals that you can open for a variety of resources. Stuff like silica pearls, obsidian, even element if you're really lucky. Specifically, I was hoping that the gacha I was now taming would produce obsidian, as I could then turn it into polymer. So once it tamed up, I checked its resource production and lo and behold, it could produce obsidian. So returning to base, I tossed out my new gacha, filled it full of stone and set its production to obsidian only. Okay, great. I got obsidian, but I need a fabricator to make it into polymer. I'm gonna need more oil. One step at a time, let's get the fabricator. I will also get as much paste crafting as I can possibly make. Although I want half of that stone just to feed to you. And I then spent some time crafting up the required spark powder and cementing paste I need for the fabricator, before heading out in search of another trilobite to harvest for the oil. After killing the one trilobite I found that wasn't guarded by an aggressive dino, I gathered just enough oil to craft the fabricator. Taking the time to kill some dodos for their hide, I headed back home where I tossed in the oil to make up some gasoline, and once that was all crafted, I headed down to gather some more metal before using my new fabricator to make the polymer I wanted. You know, this is going to be a challenge, and even something as simple as just making the dino storage terminal was like a 2-day affair of getting all the resources. So I ended day 10 by placing my dino storage terminal, configuring it to passively produce poop and eggs. I noticed on the morning of day 11 that another of my patrons had set up nearby, and they even had a gacha. My target, however, was to get myself a good old toxic dodo. That is a very scary thing to see. Buffoon nameless, okay. I want to see whose base this is. Pain and regret. This is Protorax. Oh, hi Protorax. Running around the river, searching for toxic dodo to tame, I got randomly targeted by an enforcer, adding another death to the counter. Thanks, Grav. So I respawned, made up a parachute, and collected my gravestone only to get aggroed by absolutely everything around. Must be due to the loot dodo nearby. If it gets mad at you, everything gets mad at you. And the loot dodo has a massive aggro range. So running for my life, I made it back to base only to watch the enforcer now target Protorax's base. Luckily, he was offline, but it will be a surprise when he logs in to find himself dead. I think I am going to make use of the teleportation thing. Let's head to the Gen 2 Eden biome. I feel like that, if anything, is going to have the least amount of predators. I don't know, this is probably a bad idea. So off I went to Gen 2, spawning directly in front of a Primal Tech Parasaur. I ran for my life, making it far enough away that I got distracted on something else. I searched around for a toxic dodo, and finding one, I boiled it and knocked it out, feeding it all of my kibble and waited for it to tame up. And once it was tamed, I mounted it to take out a pesky dilo before boiling it up and looting a nearby alpha parasaur's death bag. With no more kibble for taming, I headed back to Extinction Island, not wanting to risk dying again for at least no reason. It's unfortunate that the one dodo we got is a male, so he's not going to give me any eggs. And then making my way back to base, I resupplied on some toxic kibble. I'm gonna make this primal pike. That'll be quite useful. Because the primal pike does a load of torpor on hit. Ending the day with my brand new weapon. Starting day 12, I gathered some thatch to restock on boilers before heading back to Eden to find more toxic dodos to tame up. Luring one away, I boiled it, knocked it out. Okay, it does only take one kibble, he just happened to eat the rest. And then boiling up the dodo, I collected a red drop before continuing my toxic dodo taming. I tamed up a nearby toxic zombie dodo before I found a Rudolph. Knowing that Rudolphs are an extremely strong early game tame, I wanted to tame it but died to a swarm of dinos before I could knock it out. As I respawned, I got immediately targeted by a necrotic dodo, which instantly launched its bomb and sent me right back to the respawn screen. So I respawned again, only this time to see that my toxic dodo died to an alpha dodo. Well, at least it wasn't a female. And, well, you see, Rudolph is actually an interesting tame. Flyers don't work on the server, but Rudolph is a land mount that can fly, so I don't know if he'll work. Collecting my gravestone, I boiled alpha dodo and began filling it with arrows, and I wanted to kill it so I can get its loot, but running out of arrows I had to go collect some flint to make more. And once I had some more, I reboiled the dodo and killed it, gaining some resources and loot from the kill. With the alpha dodo dealt with, I turned my attention back to Rudolph, boloing it as I poked it until it went night-night. Filled it with measure berries and waited for it to tame up, and naming it Wixen once it did so before tossing out my other toxic dodo and riding it around. I attempted to kill another alpha dodo, but it was too strong for my little toxic dodo, so running away I found and boiled a PT, killing it for the hide I'd need to make a Rudolph saddle. Finding and killing another male toxic zombie dodo, I harvested it for the resources, and then as I was running around, I stumbled a little too close to another loot dodo, gaining the aggro of everything around. So running as I jumped off a cliff right into the waiting attack of an enforcer. Yep, another death. So after respawning and collecting my stuff, I continued the search for a female toxic dodo. Eventually giving up where I returned home where once I spawned in, I was met by a buffoon nameless. Oh my god! Why me? I'm so dead, I'm so dead, So I ended off the day leading the buffoon nameless away from my gravestone. And dying to the buffoon nameless far enough away from my grave, I respawned at base, climbed down my ladder, and headed to go collect my stuff. I kinda just want to show what I mean with like how flyers work on the server. So I'm gonna quickly grab this, put you to sleep, give you some meat. Yeah, and I'll show you how it works. That way we can compare if the Rudolph is working or if he just doesn't get affected by the same rules. With the PT asleep, I harvested some stone while I waited for it to tame up. I am going to quickly go fetch more crystal to make more soul balls. I returned to base, pulling the resources to craft the soul balls, before returning to see that the gacha I had dropped some stone for was tamed. So I checked its production before boiling it up, fed some narcotics to the sleeping PT, before checking if I could tame up a fabled gacha with stone and metal. Unfortunately, I could not. So I headed back to base, checking my soul terminal. Hell yeah, stone. Oh, my male toxic dodo got me 3 toxic eggs already. Well done, guy. And then I cooked up some meat, restocked my parachutes before I got yeeted off my platform by an alpha enforcer. Then as I respawned, died to an electric parrot. Okay, game. Thanks for collecting my stuff before returning to check on the PT and feeding it a tame helper to help lower its food. I balled it up once it tamed and returned to base. Okay, let's take you home. And then we will test out if you work and subsequently test out if Rudolph works. Okay, we'll throw out you. And we'll throw out Rudolph, our Wixen. And then I crafted up both of the saddles. Okay, so first off, PT saddle. I can't ride it. I'm pressing E. It is not letting me get on. Rudolph doesn't let me get on. Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, Rudolph counts as a flyer. Very powerful, very powerful early game. I mean, you saw he only took some berries to tame. He's got 22,000 health, but you cannot ride him. I started off day 14 learning all of the kibbles I could before taking my parasol out to gather some berries. The damn tarantulas had a different plan instead. Killing my parasol as I was mid-berry run, and then escaping with my life, and knowing I needed a new berry gatherer, I began knocking out a Pachyrhinosaurus. Once all was asleep, I shoved some berries into it and waited for it to tame up, collecting and cracking some gacha crystals while waiting the entire day for the Pachyrhino to tame. Give me a name for my new Pachyrhinosaurus.
Hornless. That's its name. Hornless.
Oh, I thought you were describing it. I balled up Hornless and returned to base, where I learned and crafted a saddle, and I then set out on my new berry gather and harvested all of the bushes I could see. But nice, I just got my final vegetable seed. I got the citronelle that I needed. And with the vegetable seeds collected, I returned to base to plant them, even expanding my farm to have at least 2 plots of each vegetable. Checking to see what I needed for alpha kibble, toxic blood I was short on. I need toxic blood, so I need to go kill the toxic. So I TP'd to Eden to do just that. Collecting a drop where I got a godlike gacha saddle, it might come in handy before knocking out my favorite creature in Ark, the majestic Maywing. Seeing an ovis next to me, I of course had to kill it and harvest it for mutton to tame the Maywing, and shoving the meat inside as I ended the day by simply finishing harvesting the ovis. And seeing a second Maywing, and 2 is always better than 1, I knocked it out and fed it, and then while I was waiting for the Maywings to tame up, I was greeted by another Patreon member, MFP Master, as he stopped by to say hi. So we chatted for a bit before parting ways, and as he set off I balled up my Maywing before exploring the region. Using the teleport pad, I arrived in the Gen 2 space biome, not a place you want to be unprepared, as I spawned with a primal tech truck staring at me. So I quickly ran back through the teleporter back to safety, and then deciding to check out another area as I teleported to South Zone 1. I spotted a female toxic Dodo, so I headed to tame it, and then as it tamed I named it Frodo. Welcome to the team, Dodo the Frodo. I then bolted and began killing the toxic parasol, harvesting it for its blood, and then finding another female toxic zombie Dodo, I knocked it out, fed it kibble, and balled it up once it tamed. Finally killing the parasol, I harvested it for its blood before returning back to Extinction Island, and then running away from the defense unit. Hey look, it's a Dodo with a hat and he's smoking. What do I do, Chaotic?
You shoot him at a distance, but make sure you're still close enough to die.
I shot at the kamikaze Dodo and watched it explode, but I was not close enough to die. So returning to base, I cleared my inventory and crafted up some alpha kibble before scouring the river for an alpha creature to tame. Spotting an alpha dilo, I headed to go tame it. And as I approached where the alpha dilo was, I got targeted by an omega reaper. That's an omega reaper! Dead! Don't touch me! Ah! Nope, 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 dodge! I narrowly escaped being eaten, but I continued to run until the Reaper wasn't interested anymore. Finding an alpha gacha, I dropped some kibble, and after a tame checked its production. Boiling it up, I saw a smoking Dodo approaching me, so I shot it, but after it didn't die, I continued to just run away. Barely making it onto my ladder as the Dodo lost aggro as I replenished my alpha kibble stocks before heading back out to find more alphas to tame. After not finding anything, I jumped off of the bridge to parachute over to my base, only I didn't have any more parachutes, so I went splat onto the ground. Luckily, I died near base, so I collected my stuff, refilled my crop plots with poop before randomly dying to a Dodo Ivan. I just can't catch a break. So after collecting my stuff again, I saw an alpha PT, so I made sure to craft up some parachutes this time before heading over to tame it. Landing near the PT, I tried to bolo it, but alpha PTs can't be boloed, and it flew off. So as a consolation, I stole the Apex Dilo egg. Yoink. I'm looking for any type of... No, that's the Reaper again. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. I'm out of here, leave me to be. And escaping once again, I found a toxic dodo which I knocked out, but the apex dino decided it was snack time. So running further down the beach, I tamed up a female toxic dodo just as I spotted a primal rock drake. I quickly brought up the dodo and returned home. And then logging on in the morning, the Ark gods were being nice as a male toxic dodo spawned up on my platform. So after checking my terminal, seeing I had a female, I knocked it out. Good to know things can spawn up here. It means I probably should spawn proof this platform. Using the transfer tool, I refilled my crop plots with poop and tossed out my female toxic zombie dodo to let them have some baby making time. Heading down to gather some resources, I crafted some polymer. Using the resources, I made up a second soul terminal, configuring it to newborn auto trap. Crafted a generator, I wanted some air cons but was short electronics, so after queuing them to craft, I tossed out the dodo eggs to hatch. Let's head back over to the Gen 2 Eden. I scoped out my surroundings, seeing an alpha trike. Alpha trike aggressive? Yes. And I ran from the trike only to get jumped by an alpha pego. So respawning at base, I hatched my dodo eggs before returning to collect my stuff in Eden and continuing my search for an alpha to tame. As I was exploring, I found a cave behind a waterfall because all good waterfalls have to have a hidden cave behind it. Oh, there's a cool and very resource rich cave. Ah, damn. And inside the cave there was some Desmodus which killed me. So I respawned in the region. Oh. This does not look like the correct location to have respawned. But I had to just TP back to Eden too and made my way to the waterfall cave. Now I'll find the Dilo when I don't have anything to tame him. Leaving the Dilo for the moment, I eventually reached the cave where I watched as a Desmodus ganged up on a toxic turtle. I then punched a tree for thatch as I could craft a transfer tool and grab my stuff from the gravestone. And doing just that, I was then crafting a soul finder when the Desmodus left the cave and killed me. So I collected my stuff once again and got blindsided again by the alpha pego. Oh man, I miss Striders. These things are so good. Requires 57 mutagel, yeah. Running back to my gravestone, I collected my stuff and bowled a raptor that thought I was going to be lunch. Killing it, I then bowled and knocked out an alpha dimorph, and feeding it some kibble it tamed up. Seeing as it only took one kibble to tame, I took the rest from its inventory before boiling it up, and heading to tame its friend, I bowled it, knocked it out, and fed it a kibble and boiled it once it tamed. Oh. Okay. Let's head home. Because the next thing to tame is actually going to be extremely annoying, because the next tier of dinos is elemental. I can't literally ride 0 of the elementals because they're all flyers. The only elementals you get are flyers, which are griffins, megaraptors, parrots, and archaeopteryx. Which is a little annoying that they are all flyers, because in the past I've always used the elemental to kill my first vanilla boss. I'm gonna have to figure out another way to do that now. A defense unit might be what I can use to kill. I returned to base, tossed the toxic dodo eggs next to the forges to hatch before placing my dimorphs inside of my soul terminal. Okay, there's the desert titan and a forest titan on the map right now. They're probably gonna have to be the vanilla boss that I kill. One of them. I don't know which one. Or even how. I ended off the day checking what I needed to make elemental kibble, and all I needed was some cooked prime meat. So after restocking on alpha kibble, I was short some more toxic blood, and luckily that's what these guys are for, as I tossed out my baby toxic dodos, killed them, and harvested the corpses. Cooking up some prime meat, I tabbed out of the game, only to end up dying. I don't even know what happened. I was all tabbed. Oh. I see. I'm surprised my base is intact. Oh, I just got spirit dodoed. Oh yeah, male and female. We're still good. We're still good, she. And this is why you need to spawn proof your platform. Luckily, I was really smart enough to keep a breeding pair of toxic dinos in the soul terminal. Okay, my alpha dimorphs have not generated any eggs yet. I think I need to go get a male. I don't know any like potions mod, do I? To change? No. So I headed back to Eden to see if I could find a male alpha dimorph. You know, I'm going to need an iguanodon for making berries. So I might as well grab you now. So knocking out the iguanodon, I went to gather some measures to tame it when everything started aggroing on me. These damn origin dodos. But as I escaped, I saw that the alpha carno lost the fight, so I collected its loot and harvested. I had to swat away a swarm of Meganura as I died to a light parrot. And then proceeded to die again and again. Finally managing to collect my gear after leading everything away, I got attacked by a raptor and luckily it was just vanilla, so I boiled it and killed it before returning to Extinction Island where I died to the cold. It was so cold my bones broke and I died. Loading in on day 21, I scanned the beaches of the river from my base and seeing some alphas I thought I could tame, I headed over. Starting to poke the alpha dodo to sleep, but got a lucky hit on me, sending me right back to my base. Take 2. After recovering my gear, I knocked out the alpha dodo, tamed it up and harvested the dilo nearby. Knocking out another dilo I waited for it to tame. I'm gonna name you Doyle. And then boiling it up once tamed. Okay, so the dodo should definitely lay eggs, even if it's only one. But now I need to think how am I gonna defeat an alpha boss? I'm thinking probably like a defense unit would be my best bet. As I return to base, I check my soul terminal. Okay, my dimorphs are even generating eggs as well. Not a lot, but some. And threw the new additions into it before crafting my first pieces of elemental kibble. Let's go have a look around if there's any like defense units I can tame. Heading out, I began searching for a defense unit, eventually finding one, so I checked its stats with the spyglass. 49k, 50,000 health. Oh, you might be my prize. And then while I was trying to knock it out, the defense unit didn't like that much and killed me. So I then made sure to craft up everything I would need for a trap and a respawn point, and now I just had to hope it cannot break stone. So heading back to where the defense unit was, I set up my trap and respawn point and began luring the defense unit into it. Oh. Damn it. Okay, are you in? I think he's in. And then after multiple death runs, the defense unit was finally in the trap. Oh, you gotta love Ark hit registration. He can't hit me through here. There we go. 30k. Nope. He finally hit me. Once the beds were off cooldown, I respawned in the morning of day 22. Collected my gravestone and continued poking the robotic droid until it went to sleep. And then feeding it the kibble I waited for it to tame. Hell yeah, he's tamed. So I am going to name you R2-D2. You know, name him after the robot from Star Trek. So picking up my trap, since I'm playing on a server and I'm a nice player, I mounted R2-D2 and rolled away. So what's cool about you, how do you do it? Oh yeah, you hold C and then you go pew 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 pew. And then leveling up R2-D2, I tested to see if the blasts were affected by melee damage, and they sadly were not. So killing an ice Leopleurodon, I halved its corpse. So you are 100% go be my ticket to kill the Forest Titan. So I half think we go do that now. Like try now. That way if I fail, I still got a couple days to figure out a different solution. Does mean though, I'm probably going to need to use you guys. So I grabbed some Maywings out of the soul terminal, tossed them out to breed. When I tamed these guys, I tamed them purely just for eggs. But I think I'm going to allow myself the rule that I can use them purely to like transport thing. Because like I can't fight anything on these guys and they're not going to survive. And while waiting on the Maywings to finish having some babies, I was getting pretty annoyed at the unwanted visitor above. Can you go away? Stupid Dodo Ivan. Once the Maywing laid some eggs, I boiled them up, threw the eggs by the furnaces to hatch before going to make a saddle when the Dodo Ivan, probably hearing what I said, came down and killed me. How rude. So after respawning, I made up a saddle, collected my stuff, and saw the Dodo Ivan land. So saddling up and mounting a Maywing, I made sure to use up all the levels for the Maywing to stamina and health before setting off for the Forest Titan. It was a short glide until I reached him. So landing nearby as I swapped to R2D2. Seems like as safe an area as any to, you know, risk it all. Because of my stupid challenge requiring me to beat an alpha boss by day 25. And thus began shooting at the Titan. Eventually getting hit once as I rolled away to collect some berries for healing brews. And healing up R2D2, I headed back to continue blasting the giant tree. Pew 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 pew. Come on! You just stand there and you take it like a... You take it like the giant tree that you are. Is this the most ethical boss to kill? No. But the challenge is hard enough already. I am going to make use of whatever I can. Especially because he gets those random big ass heals if he tries to walk away from me. Time for you to meet your maker. It was not me, but you know, I'm sending you to the maker. I want to just get a pot shot onto that Chaos Dodo from like a mile away so it can die. There we go. Oh, the Chaos Dodo did not die. I had to take out the Alpha Bronto before killing my first Chaos creature, this dumbass Chaos Dodo. So returning to the Forest Titan, a few more blasts, and finally, it was done. There it is! The boss defeated by day 25. It's only day 23. That counts. I will hear none of it about it not counting. Hiya! Hiya! Ninja. Ninja's flip. Oh shit. And Ninja flipped right off the cliff, missing my teleport. That's okay, we do it again. So re-teleporting back to base, I began shooting at an Alpha Carno across the river, and then rolling into the Wasteland. I wanted to go get some polymer, as these corrupt nodules that you get from the corrupted creatures actually counts as polymer. And even a corrupted fabled, if I could kill that, I could get so much potentially nice loot. So I spent the rest of the day in the Wastelands farming corrupted creatures. As in Primal Fear, killing fableds is the best way to get loot. They're kind of like loot pinatas. They're tanky, but loot pinatas. So while farming has only to get attacked by a Dodo Ivan. Oh that's bad, that's bad. I do not want to fight the Dodo Ivan. Maybe I do though. And turning to fight the Dodo Ivan, I quickly realized that was a bad idea. Nope. So rolling back to base, I quickly pulled up R2D2 and climbed up my ladder, where I hid for the rest of the day. Okay, so I can now officially make elemental kibble. What do I need for Apex? I need elemental eggs, and this is where I need to start making jerky. So I need a preserving bin. So setting up a couple of bins, I decided to go harvest some more berries. Then after that quick berry run, I tossed out R2D2 and began shooting at a fabled Tropio. Not being able to shoot down as low as the Tropio was from the platform, I jumped down to ground level in order to kill it for its loot. And then I spent some time just rolling about on R2D2, killing what I could for loot and resources. And then amidst my farming, I ran into Reaper, another one of my patrons playing on the server. And after giving him some advice, we went our separate ways. Fabled gacha. Let's take him out, he'll drop some good loot. And rolling up to the gacha, I blasted at him off the bridge. Following him down, I eventually killed it, but no loot was dropped. So I continued farming, even taking out an elder defense unit. Oh wow, they give a lot of like cementing paste. Okay. Can I find any fableds? Because that's mainly what I want at this point, to kill fableds for their loot. But I don't see any, so I think I'm just gonna head home for the day. Day 25 started by me continuing to farm on the way back to base, taking out some more defense units, an Alpha Rex, and even trying to kill a caustic parrot. But I couldn't hit the bird, so I just went home. Offloading my loot, I noticed the fire leopleurodon was dead, so I jumped down to harvest the body. Oh, cool. It's officially day 25, and I have already achieved my goal of beating a vanilla boss. But now, it's the new goal. By day 50, I need to go and kill an origin. Origin is the first, call it difficult, of the boss tiers. With literally, I mean, we saw the Dodo, Origin Dodo, with 100 million health. I'm gonna have to keep working up at the tiers. Currently at Alpha. Next, I need to see if I can try to get myself an Elemental. How am I gonna knock out an Elemental? I think I need to make a Primal Compound Bow. So checking the beaches again, as I always did. Oh, now there's an Alpha Dodo for me to tame. So I jumped and parachuted over to tame it, and landed on a rock. I bowled it and poked it in the butt until it went to sleep. Fed it some kibble when I saw a kamikaze dodo waddling towards me. I ran away, trying to lead it far enough away so I wouldn't kill my dodo when it blew up, and the alpha dodo tamed up and began following me, drawing the attention, and that's when the kamikaze dodo exploded. I couldn't believe that my alpha dodo tanked the explosion. So I balled it up and headed back to base, only to be killed by an elder fjord hawk. Not once, but twice, as I went to get back my stuff. Jumping from my base, foregoing a parachute, I almost died to fall damage, but I eventually collected my stuff and just ran away. Right next to an alpha gacha. I figured I might as well tame it, so I dropped it some kibble and waited for it to tame. And then boiling up the gacha, I tossed out R2D2 and killed a fabled tropio. Returning to base, I set up my gachas to breed, just to see what the alpha gachas could produce. Can I shoot off the back of R2D2? I can. Does it go where I'm aiming? Does. I might need to do that in order to tame an elemental. Just ride R2 and shoot off the back of him. And seeing a fabled PT across the river, I went to kill it, but it flew away, so instead I killed the alpha brachy. And after clearing the beach of dinos, I decided to head back to the corrupted wastelands, and that was probably my best bet to find fabled creatures. And so arriving at the wastelands, I cleared a loot drop of creatures before exploring the area, and even entering the King Titan's arena, where I hit a water jet, sending R2D2 and I flied into the air. With some expert parachute skills, I avoided killing R2D2 from fall damage, so continuing to farm in the wastelands, I killed a fabled corrupt try gaining an ascendant compound bow, but I would need a primal compound bow in order to shoot the primal trank arrows. So I spent the rest of the time killing what I could, taking out a fabled gacha, but again, no loot dropped. I feel scammed. Where's my loot? Where's my fabled gacha loot? And then rolling up onto a defense unit, thinking it would be an easy kill, I was quickly shown otherwise and had to make a hasty retreat. Almost died, I barely managed to put enough distance between us. And then arriving at base, I grabbed the loot off R2D2, balled him up and climbed up to the base. I got a behemoth gateway. Bro just shat out a behemoth gateway. So cracking the drop gacha crystals before making some spark powder. I need to test if elemental parrots are bowlable. Probably not, but I feel like I need to test. Right, now that my gachas have been breeding for a while, let me have a look at what stuff they are able to produce. So checking the soul terminal, I didn't have as many baby gachas as I'd hoped, and none of them produced anything cool, so instead I had an idea. I think in order to ramp up my seed production to make the better narcotics, I need to go get an iguanodon. Unfortunately, I was told the best place to get an iguanodon is Abberation. Well, that's not good. The ab zone was just not survivable. Around every corner, there was something that killed me. Okay, then. Oh. Why was I told to come here? Actually, nope. I'm starting to understand why I was told to come here. The explosions are probably why. And on one of the runs, I actually managed to collect a loot drop, but after seeing a skeletonized Rex, I ran into the blast of a necrotic dodo. After the necrotic dodo, I respawned in after running a bit, got chased by Primal Tech Parasaur, so teleporting to a different area, I died to a direbear. They've truly made this place feel like Ab. It feels like death. So much death. And after another death to the necrotic Dodo. Oh, hi there, necrotic Dodo. I was losing it. It was a constant cycle of pain. I respawned, died to Basilisk. Respawned, ran forward, died to Origin Raptor. Respawned, tried to pass the Origin, died again. Oh, I'm spawning into multiple tombstones. That's never a good sign. Why are you pouncing me? Death to Corrupt Raptor. Respawn, sees Origin Dodo. Run away, boom, necrotic Dodo. I am giving up on getting my stuff back from Ab. I'm just gonna make new here at base. Nowhere to cut your losses. So re-gearing, luckily I didn't have much on me when I went into the Ab zone. I crafted and placed an auto collector to pick up the gacha crystals before heading back to do a stone run for my gachas. Oh. A Tortuga. Lovely. And then returning to base, I checked my baby gachas. Organic polymer and metal. So swapping them out, I enabled their breeding, set their production to the resources I wanted before powering the generator and collector. Grabbing a Maywing, I saddled it and headed out. Let's go see if we can find an elemental. And then spotting a greenhouse nearby. I'm curious whose greenhouse it is. The unknown. Okay, nice. So gliding around on my Maywing, I found a couple of caustic creatures. That's a featherlight. Female. Only to get targeted by a caustic megaraptor, so I headed back home, crafted up some tranks to end off the day. And then crafting myself a long neck to fire the trank darts, I headed back out to the swamp. Just would make sense that next to the swamps where all the caustics are. 145k torpor, no shot. I spent all day searching for an easy-ish elemental to tame. I watched as a caustic featherlight was fighting a group of elder fjordhawks. See, that's why I'm thinking caustic is better, because it doesn't like shoot forward, it always shoots down. So it shouldn't be able to kill me in the trap. So setting up my trap, I realized I had forgotten my darts. So back to base I went. And after crafting even more darts, I headed back out to try to tame this elemental, landing on the island pillar. Electric parrot, female. So I had to lead off a buffoon and another Dodo before setting up my trap. After spending a while trying to locate and then lure the elemental parrot to my trap, I decided to head back to base to craft some regular ammo and a scope. That way I could aggro stuff from a distance and bring it to me instead of me going to it. Setting up my respawn points, I watched as the electric parrot I wanted die to a combo of a Primal Raptor and a fabled Bloodstalker. So picking up my structures, I jumped over to the next island to see what it held. I may have to find a different strategy. And as my plan just wasn't working, I decided to pack it up and head home. Probably not safe for me to be here. Let me get the f out of here. Ending the day by gliding away from the buffoon ferox. I realized in the morning that even if I was able to trap an elemental, I wouldn't actually have enough darts to do it. So when I spotted the fabled on the other side of the river, I tossed out R2D2 and began shooting at it. And then watching as the fabled Bracky die, I wondered what actually killed it, only to see that a primal tech quits was the reason. So I quickly ran away as the primal tech quits are a pain to deal with. And then I spotted a wild Tortuga, so needing to move it away, I shot at it to begin luring it and rolling through the wasteland. That's when I got attacked by a primal tech raptor. Almost dying to its extremely high damage from its bleed. I barely got out of alive, and then I saw a spur dragon, one of the most powerful creatures. Even though like flyers are disabled, I didn't want anyone else to accidentally run into it. So I was beginning to alert the server where it was, but while I was distracted, a primal Spino ended up killing R2D2 and myself. That's a major setback. Respawning, I attempted to run into the wasteland to collect my gear, but after realizing that just wasn't the best way, I allowed myself to die to a corrupt trike to respawn at base, where I grabbed a Maywing, headed to the wasteland to lure the Spino away from my gravestone, collected my gear, and then headed home. Back at home, I had an idea on how to get some resources I needed, like blood and hide. So I tossed out some baby alpha gachas, planning to sacrifice them and harvest their corpses when the primal tech quets descended from the heavens, deciding to pay me a visit, killing all of the gachas I had thrown out. Like, I get I wanted to murder the alpha gacha, but that's just the thing. I wanted to murder them. Thankfully, I hadn't tossed out all of my gachas, so I threw a breeding pair into my soul terminal before killing and harvesting what I had left. I got a whole bunch of alpha blood. The other thing I need to make the narcotics. Hello, Protorax. I was about to harvest some alpha gacha for their blood, and then I had an unwelcome visitor. And then, being the nice guy that I am, I helped Protorax out by luring the Chaos Dodo away from his base to end off the day. And then parting ways with Protorax, I stopped by my base to clear my inventory before heading out to the swamp. I was heading to the swamp to see if I could get some rare flowers and mushrooms to make even more narcotics. After belly flopping for a bit, I gathered some much needed flowers and mushrooms, then headed back but where I attempted to turn them into narcotics. And that's when I decided the benefit of playing on a server is I get to trade with my patrons. So I was going to trade one of my Maywings for an iguanodon. A fairly fair trade if you ask me. I was even going to give him a high level one. There you go, the trade even included lure a Dodo Ivan away from your base. So after claiming the iguanodon, here's the main reason I wanted it. The iguanodon has a very specific niche ability where you can put a whole bunch of berries or vegetables into its inventory, hold E, and seed fruit. And now they have a ton of seeds instead of the fruit. Very helpful for mods like Primal Fear, which uses seeds to make narcotics. Once the narcotics were all crafted up, I could then make a bunch of alpha infused darts. I then set off back to the swamp in search of an elemental to tame. Setting up my trap, I headed back to base to make up a pistol and some ammo in hopes to use it to aggro the elemental creature without wasting any darts. And then finding a fabled PT corpse on the river as I headed back to base, I took a pit stop to grab the loot and halve its body, and then making my way to the trap, I shot the caustic parrot nearby to bring it over, and then I had to lure the Dodo Ivan away from my trap before I continued to try to trap the parrot. Dying twice, I finally managed to trap the parrot by moving the gateways actually to surround it. Knocking it out, I fed a kibble and a tame helper, and once it tamed up, bolted up, and packed up my trap, getting my first elemental. I even died to the Dodo Ivan, but at least I bowled up the parrot, only to then immediately crash, because this is Ark, where you crash a lot. And then logging back into the server, I respawned on my respawn point, collected my gear, and headed back home where I named the parrot Noxious, before tossing it into the soul terminal where it would begin to produce me eggs. So restocking my pistol ammo, I then headed back out in search for a male caustic parrot. Finding the male parrot, I realized I forgot my gates. So back to base I went, grabbed the gates, back to the swamp, set up the trap, lured the parrot over, and this parrot actually got into the trap and I was successful in keeping it there. So I then knocked it out, fed it kibble, tamed it, and bowled it up. Packed up my trap, because again, I'm playing on a server and nobody likes random structures around the map. So I then headed home, tossed the parrot into the soul terminal before boiling up the iguanodon. I'm making my first bits of apex kibble. And after the kibble was done crafting, I grabbed my Maywing and we set off in search for an apex Dilo to tame. Out of my search, I was near Herbivore Island where I flew a little too close to a demonic Mesopithecus and died to its massive explosions. And then I respawned and tossed my Maywings out to breed when Amir, another patron, asked if I could give him some vegetable seeds. So grabbing some rock carrot and savory, I tossed out the iguanodon and seeded the fruits for him, and in return he gave me a Maywing I could use to collect my gear. Saddling the Maywing, I headed out to Herbivore Island, and seeing the demonic Mesopithecus was nowhere nearby, grabbed my stuff and made my escape. Oh my god, someone has built a base just randomly on a beach? This guy has balls of steel. Lone wolf. I continued to search for an apex creature to tame, and then finding an apex Dilo in the wee hours of day 36, there was only one problem. Or I suppose maybe multiple. Elder Fjordhawks. If you didn't know, Fjordhawks in Primal Fear are some of the most aggressive creatures. So diving underwater to prevent being attacked, I resurfaced only to see my apex Dilo had died. Well, I guess it's back to the search. and then I decided to teleport over to Gen 2 and run around on foot to see if I could find anything. Arriving there, I ran around searching, but I just couldn't see anything, and that's when I spotted something amazing. I'm watching the fight of a century, a primal tech stego versus demonic ovis. And with the death of the ovis, I gained my first demonic soul. I made sure to lead the primal tech stego far enough away so it would allow me to loot the ovis's body. And then while I was still in Gen 2, I watched as the second ovis died to the same primal tech stego, another demonic soul, and even more loot for me. I've spent 2 days looking for a single apex and found none. So giving up in this area for now, I ducked into a safe alcove and teleported home. To my surprise and sheer dumb luck, I spawned in and saw an apex dialer greeting me. Of course, I knocked it out and tamed it up immediately. Now I need to get home because I'm about to pass out from torpor because I don't have any food or water. And there we go, sleep time. After I woke up from my forced nap, I drank some water from the river before heading back to base. That's when I met up with Amir again, and he also had an apex dialer, so I bred his with mine. Of course, I gave him the first egg, which was a female, and waited for the dialers to breed when randomly, everything at my base died. My Maywing, the dialers, and myself. Twice. Unknown to me, there was a buffoon Lyropterodon flying around. So I crafted up some more narcotics and headed back out to find a replacement apex dialer again. Landing in the swamp, I died to a demonic Mesopithecus again. The second I landed, I turned my head. I notice that's a monkey with a flaming tail. I am dead. I respawned, grabbed a backup Maywing, saddled it, and headed to collect my stuff. Harvesting the dead Maywing because I couldn't see my grave, I grabbed my stuff and scurried away, and then finding a male apex dialer right on the beach, I quickly knocked it out, but before I could feed it, I had to take care of the Deinonychus and Alpha Dodos. Killing the Deinonychus, I knocked out a Sarco and the Alpha Dialo before feeding the apex Dialo, and then boiling it up, I said why not and tamed the Alpha Dodo as well. Heading home, I stopped by Amir's base to breed our Dilos together again. Okay, a buffoon just died nearby because I just got 2 Godliath chainsaws and got 2 Godliath pikes. I got a 720% chainsaw and then waiting for the Dilos to breed. The first was a male that Amir kept since he had a female already, which I technically gave him. And then I waited for the next egg, which was a female. So I thanked Amir for his supposed generosity, grabbed my female Dilo and dropped down to my base. I suppose it's nice to have some good upstairs neighbors. And I then spent the entirety of day 39 breeding my Dilos. First egg hatched, male. While waiting for the Dilos to breed again, using my newly acquired chainsaw to harvest the trees on my platform, and then using my new Alpha Dodo to transport the wood. The second Dilo egg was laid and hatched. No female yet, just another male. So seeing a manticore flying around, I quickly balled up my Dilos. I wasn't going to be losing my breeding pair again. And then as the manticore de-rendered, I tossed back out the Dilos and continued breeding. Third egg, third male. The manticore returned, so I balled up the Dilos, and again, getting tired of having to stop what I was doing, I led the manticore far away from my base, dragging it to the south of the extinction island where I returned to base to continue breeding. Doing another wood run while the Dilos had some fun, I returned to find another male was laid. Come on game, I'm all for gender equality, give me some females please. And then day 40 began with me refilling my crop plots while continuing to breed for female apex Dilo. And then finally, the 5th egg was the charm and I had a second female Dilo. Boiling up the breeders, I tossed them all into the soul terminal and went to scan the river. Only to my surprise, there was a wild female apex Dilo just living its best life. So of course, I rushed over and tamed it, named it 1 in 64 chance and tossed it into the soul terminal so I could begin waiting for some apex eggs. Even managing to use them to craft my first bits of fabled kibble. And now I set out in search for fabled PT. Hearing an explosion as I rested for stam on my Maywing, a demonic parasaur was fighting a primal tech, and they both lost, so that means I win. Collecting the spoils of war I didn't participate in, I got something amazing. Primal compound bow! Primal compound bow! Oh yeah! Now that is an amazing find. You see, the primal compound bow is the best tranking weapon in Primal Fear, being 3 times as good as its closest rival. After missing some shots at the only fabled PT I found, I ended the day returning to base and clearing up my inventory. Stocking up on kibble and trank darts in the morning of day 41, I planned to go and see if I could get myself a buffoon creature so I could start taking out the first tier of bosses. Putting a buffoon Dodo out, it reminded me that I've never actually tried the buffoon Dodo, and if you didn't know, the entire reason that that creature exists is me. I suggested its existence. I also suggested that it poops nuke-Dodos. So if you're wondering why such a creature exists, you've found your answer. I found a buffoon gigantopithecus near the swamp, and when I stopped to check it with the spyglass, I got attacked by Tortuga's minions. I even forgot that Tortuga had minions. So after respawning, I set out to collect my gear, but seeing a carcanos below my base, I wanted to see what it was exactly, but then I was reminded of a downside of playing on the server. Wait, what are you doing? Why are you killing it? I wanted to see what it was. Please don't kill stuff right outside my base as I'm looking at it. You don't even harvest the corpse, you're so wasteful. So I then headed out to collect my gravestone and continued my search for a buffoon. But instead found a fabled PT. So while tracking out the PT, it landed on a random rock in the water, allowing me to knock it out rather safely. And feeding the PT some kibble, I waited for it to tame before boiling it up and continuing to explore. And gliding up to the snow castle, I called dibs on it for a future base location, even dropping a foundation inside before making my exit, and hitting the world border where I was then targeted and killed by a buffoon ferox. So respawning, I grabbed a Maywing, made a saddle, and flew back in an attempt to get my stuff. Arriving at my death beacon, I attempted to glide past and lure the ferox's way, landing in the ocean where I wasn't called to think of a plan. And then as I went back, I landed above my grave where I died again. So respawning, I decided it wasn't worth it. And I began to just re-gear back at base, toss in my dinos to restock an apex blood, before trying to even make a new long neck, but I was out of metal. So I relit all the forges. Crafting a pick from a blueprint I had looted, I used it to gather a bunch of metal before tossing the metal into the forges. Bought an obsidian to craft another primal forge. I just tossed my gachas out to produce me some oil, filling the inventories of stone where I leveled both of them until their crafting skill was over 188%. But that's when gachas actually have a better chance in producing not just a selected resource, but also gear and other goodies. Cracking the few crystals I had, I finally got some pants. Pants! I got pants. Hey, people up there, do you guys have like 100 obsidian for me to borrow? I'll return it with interest. Luckily, Protorax and Amir had answered and were nice enough to loan me some obsidian so I could craft up the primal forge. Filling it with wood and metal, I lit the fire and let it smelt, while I added another female dilo to the breeding area and ended the day just simply collecting more metal. I added 2 more females to the apex dilo cuddle puddle before taking the males out and harvesting them for their blood. And then needing more rare mushrooms and flowers, I took a Maywing to the swamp and began flopping around until an alpha capra killed us. So after respawning, making a new saddle and grabbing a new Maywing, I returned to the swamp, collected my gear and continued to flop around for rare flowers and mushrooms, and that is until a demonic capra killed me this time. These damn capras suck. Again, I respawned, grabbed a Maywing, headed to the swamp, but my Maywing got killed by a caustic archer. Dropping me to my death and getting fed up, I grabbed a Maywing, saddled it up and flew to the snow.
Our hero flies across the world on a desperate quest to try and retrieve their primal compound bow. His ponytail billowing in the wind as he gradually glides over. Oh shit, there's a tree!
I eventually arrived at where I lost my stuff, crafted a transfer tool only to get jump scared by a managana. After avoiding it, I landed above my gravestone and successfully collected my gear. And as I wasn't a high enough level as I needed to be, I dropped my inventory into a storage box and headed out to do a note run to level up. Collected the first and second explorer notes with no issues, but when I activated the 4x note, I died immediately to a demonic Mesopithecus. Respawning, I grabbed a new Maywing and headed to do the note run again, only to die to a spirit dragon on the mountain. When I respawned, I tossed out all my apex dilos, lining them up nice and neat to where I killed them and harvested their bodies. I probably wouldn't need any more apex hide for the rest of the playthrough after this harvest, So once that was done, I grabbed a mewing, saddled it up again, and headed out to find some rare flowers and mushrooms, teleporting to one of the floating islands where I died to a demonic glowtail. Respawning, I headed back out in search for those damn mushrooms and flowers, and reaching the river swamp in the morning of day 46. I started flopping around collecting what I could before heading home. Crafting up some narcotics, Predax had asked if I could spare some obsidian, so I dropped off what I had, repaying the loan from earlier. And then returning to base, I grabbed a spyglass from my box and scanned the area before crafting up some fabled kibble and trank dots to go try and tame another fabled PT. Oh, the buffoon gigantopithecus is about to die. Yep, there we go. I got another chainsaw. 700% again. The best part of having buffoon gigantopithecus die near you, you get some free loot. And then seeing an origin RG, I tried to lure it away, but the mewing I was riding died to its injuries, stranding me in the middle of the ocean, where I died to a toxic meg. Now, day 47 started off a bit rough. Respawning from the toxic meg death, I was out of hide to make a new mewing saddle. The origin RG wiped my base. So dying as I led it away, I returned to base to find that almost everything was destroyed. Pipes disconnected, smithies and forges gone, beds demolished. So I fixed my pipelines, replaced my crafting stations, transferred everything to the smithy, and grabbing a baby mewing, I set out to go get my gravestone. I had to dive down to grab my stuff, but once I did, I returned home, replaced my beds, and made up some more apex darts and kibble, tossing in the resources needed for jerky before going and taming up a fabled gacha to end off the day. Okay, so if I'm to kill an origin by day 50, there's one of two things I need to get. Either I need to get a buffoon, or I could get an alpha indom, but my best bet is to try and get a buffoon. So after crafting up my first batch of apex primal trank arrows, I learned and crafted and placed the primal tech bench, as I then crafted the tarot. So this is like a personal little fly you can make in Primal Fear. But unfortunately, I can't fly in it. I'm pressing E, it's not working. So since I couldn't use the tarot, I tossed it into a box and headed out to the redwoods in search of a buffoon to tame. Dying to the buffoon ferox. I respawned, grabbed a mewing, and went to collect my stuff, only to arrive at my death location to see that the buffoon ferox was dead. Thank you, Chaos Theory, for killing my problems. Appreciate you, homie. We'll tame one of you later. I collected my gear, as well as the mewing saddle, before continuing onward to the redwoods, where, when I arrived, I found what I was looking for. A buffoon terror bird. Setting up my gates, I landed on top, and began grabbing the aggro of the terror bird. Tranking the terror bird was a pain, as it lost interest quickly, but after a while swapping from the trank arrows to bullets to regain its aggro, I finally dealt enough torpor to make it run. So jumping down from the gates, I chased it down and knocked it out, fed it some special kibble, and a tame helper as I now had myself a tier 1 boss killer. Boiling it up, I headed home where I named my buffoon terror bird Auntie Sam. Crafting it a saddle, I first made up some health potions before going around and killing for experience. And starting day 50, I found and took out a primal megalon outside my base, harvesting its corpse for that much needed first bits of primal blood. And leveling Auntie Sam where I bowled her up, grabbed a mewing and headed out to Penguin Island. You see, I needed to kill an origin by day 50 or at least start fighting it, and that was today. So if I had any chance of beating that challenge, I had to hurry. And arriving at Penguin Island, I was so lucky as I swapped to Auntie Sam and began firing rocket after rocket to begin ticking the origin Kairuku's 100 million health pool down little by little. Fighting for the rest of the day, eventually ending it as I continued to fight what was now a pair of origin Kairuku. I then spent the next 2 days launching down American justice onto both of the origin penguins, checking the health when I could as I was slowly whittling them down, finally killing the first penguin on day 52. Now yes, I'm a bit late, but I started fighting it on day 50. By day 50, I need to go and kill an origin. I dropped down to loot its corpse, gaining myself my first pair of Origin gear. The Origin boots. Now Origin armor is actually really powerful. Not only does it have an incredibly high armor rating, but it also has infinite durability. Now all I had to do was take out the Origin Karuku's friend, so I spent the rest of the time fighting the other overpowered penguin, getting hit a few times as it would drop down to grab its aggro, when finally on the morning of day 53 I launched the final rocket, taking out the giant penguin. Of course I made sure to remember grabbing its loot, even replacing my boots with one of better rating before teleporting home. And now the best part of me having killed an Origin is now I have 2 Origin blood, which is like 2 pieces of infinite narcotics, because Origin blood will knock out anything. But it does have a downside. If you shoot something with an Origin trank, it will gain 2 times speed and damage until it knocks out. Where yeah, you'll knock it out, but you have to survive first. So I then crafted up some more fabled kibble and even some apex metal trank arrows, and watching an Omega Reaper die to a Chaos Bee, I saw an Ace Titan out in the distance. So I set out to go and take it out, but however when I got too close to the behemoth I died to a demonic Daedon instantly that I just didn't see. Rest in peace Auntie Sam. Respawning back home, I ended off the day by simply breeding up some backup Maywings. While breeding my Maywings, I was actually visited by Reaper, who wanted to stop by and show me his fabled Maywing accord. Snooples had never looked so good. So after a short chat, my Maywings were all hatched and raised up, so I mounted one and head out to collect my stuff. I arrived at my grave, collected it, and began to glide home when out of nowhere I'd randomly died to a Fey direwolf. What? I didn't even see that one. Well, that's my first death to a Fey. That's one of the new tiers in Primal Fear. So once again, I spawned, grabbed a Maywing and saddle, and collected my stuff. Returning home, I even placed a memorial grave for Auntie Sam, and ended up by stocking up on some more primal metal trank arrows. So I have less than 20 days that I need to get to demonic tier, tame 2 demonics, start breeding them, also that I can fight the guardians by day 75. This is not going to be easy. This is probably going to be the most grindy of this 100 days. Like, I barely made it to start fighting an Origin on day 50. And it took longer than I would have liked. I mean, it's been like 3 days fighting 2 of the same Origin. So, the question is, do you think I can do it? Do you think I can get to the Guardians by day 75 without a flyer? Taming demonics on foot? Taming demonics on the ground? Yeah. Yikes. That's just asking for pain and punishment and torture. Fortunately, day 55 started out on a positive note. I'd knocked out and tamed up a fabled PT, boiling it up immediately, and then tried my luck at knocking out an elder marlin. Running from its triple of minions, I managed to escape by climbing the ladder to base, and eventually knocking out the elder marlin. I fed it some kibble, and when it tamed up, attempted to mount, but unfortunately it counted as a flyer, so I couldn't ride it. And that's when a primal tech trike attacked, as I watched as my new Megalon called in minions to attack the trike, but ultimately it was no match. And with a single attack, my Megalon was dead. And then, knowing I needed polymer, I headed out to the Maywing to go find some. Landing at a dead bacillo on the beach, I began harvesting. I could have sworn these gave polymer. Maybe not. Oh well, I'll take the spoiled meat anyway. And once I was done harvesting the corpse, I was quickly reminded that nowhere was safe, as an Omega Reaper wanted me and my Maywing for dinner. So after avoiding the balls of acid, I flew home. I feel like I can tame a fabled megalon. At least then I'll have that passive resource generation going on so long. Because I always get comments on people how to tame the fabled megalon, because they always say they can't eat. I'll show you how to do it. Once I dropped off the spoiled meat at base, I headed out in search of a fabled gacha. Even grabbing some fur pants from the upstairs loot drop, I began searching around base when I found a new Fey creature. What is that? Fey Tappy Heart. Interesting. Near the Fey Tappy, I knocked out and tamed an Apex defense unit, testing its blast on the nearby joints, and I decided I was going to name it C3PO and upgrade it from R2D2. And I then spent the rest of the day clearing out the beach near base, and then continuing to wipe out every non-fabled gacha I could find. I was up by Protorax's base when I saw it being attacked by another Apex defense unit. So being the good neighbor I was, I decided to help them and take it down. But I guess it had other plans as it pretty quickly killed C-3PO. So instead of killing it, I knocked it out. But needing more kibble in order to tame it, jumped off the bridge. Let's go. 360 no scope. Luckily, it was just outside of base, so after crafting up the kibble, I grabbed my stuff and went to feed the defense unit. Naming it Scabby, I balled it up and returned to base to stock up found darts. Needing a new boss killer, I set off in search of a buffoon Leopleurodon, and stopping in the ocean is almost never a good thing to do, especially when an apex Sarco is nearby. So after becoming lunch, I returned to grab my stuff and I made my way to Skull Island. And inside I actually found a fabled magmasaur. So after swapping to Scabby, I cleared the area of all the non-fabled magmasaurs and began to knock it out, but Scabby decided to roll off and fight. So calling it back, I tested to see if rolling over the lava would hurt me, and when it didn't, I rolled over to use Scabby more effectively, killing off every other magmasaur. Now that only the fabled was left, I dismounted, knocked out the giant fire lizard, fed it some kibble and tamed it up. Not quite what I came out here for, but I'll take it. It is a very important upgrade that'll be super important for lots of ingots. Arriving back on base, I was short the fabled hide needed to make the magmasaur saddle. So after setting up some more cementing paste to craft, Scabby and I headed off to farm for fabled hide. And I even got a level up. Look at me go, because now I can learn the origin arrow. And killing everything nearby, I kept accidentally harvesting the fabled creature's corpses with Scabby and not my chainsaw. So after rolling into the wasteland and killing off a fabled trike, dismounted, pulled out my chainsaw and harvested over 1,000 fabled hide. More than enough to make the saddle. Returning home, crafted up the saddle, headed downstairs where I threw out the magmasaur, and if you watched my Rag Alpha only challenge video, you know my Anki was named Mororor. So this is going to be named Mororor. I then spent the most of the day simply farming metal with Mororor until I returned home where I crafted my first origin arrow and headed out in search of either a male fabled PT or a fabled megalon. I had been gliding around so long that I did something I never thought was actually possible. I ran out of stamina on a Maywing, so landing in the swamp, which I quickly left once I had enough stamina, and back at Extinction Island where I found and tamed up a fabled gacha. As one resource I hadn't quite touched on yet, but would be extremely important, were elemental feathers. Now there are 4 types of feathers: caustic, electric, fire and ice. To my knowledge, there are 3 ways to go about collecting these feathers. You could either run around the map and slaughter the elementals, harvesting their bodies for them. You could tame a breeding pair of each type and murder the babies for the feathers. Or you could do what nobody ever really does and tame fabled gachas, since they have a chance to produce the feathers inside of the crystals they drop. And that's the path I was going to do. For now anyway. I wanted to try it. So when I returned home to place the gacha in the soul terminal, the sound effect of this magmasaur, it's tripping me out. I don't like it, but I need him to smelt the ingots. Don't look at me like that. I turned more around so I wouldn't have to hear its sounds. And desperately needing polymer, I grabbed Scabby and headed to Penguin Island to harvest the bodies for polymer. I had spent most of day 59 just searching for fabled megalon, flying through the river as I randomly got hit by something and it left my Maywing with 1 HP. During the scouting mission, I had even received my punishment for actually failing to kill the origin by day 50, and I had to now tame at least one of every single type of Dodo I could find. Thanks, Kaitsu. It shouldn't be too hard as I already had Toxic and Alpha. I only needed Buffoon, Necrotic, Chaos, and Spirit. Okay, maybe there's a lot. So I returned to base momentarily when a Primal Tech truck had spawned on my platform. So after leading it off, I returned to the search for the megalon, and finally finding one in the deep water where I shot it with an origin arrow. And since the arch and arrow gives them 2 times damage and speed, so if you're planning on shooting something with one, make sure you're ready to run. So now, people always say they can never make these fabled megalons eat. And I always say, what you need to do, you need to use a combination of tame helpers, because they, never mind, I used an arch and arrow, so I'm completely fine. And tossing out Scabby, I dealt with the mantas and eels after placing the kibble inside of the megalon. We have dealt with the ocean. I spoke too soon! What? Where? And after taking them out, I waited for the megalon to tame up, and after what felt like forever, I simply decided that it's clearly bugged. I have to admin tame it up and pay the kibble tax by just throwing it away. But I'll make sure to let the devs know that this bug still exists. And after dropping 11 kibble for the tame, I headed home. Arriving on the bridge near base, I waited for the chaos manticore nearby to fly away, and then tossing out my megalon. Look at her, so pretty. Looks, makes more so small. I'm going to name you Flower. I hope she didn't make noises similar to the magma saw. And then explosions going off, I quickly rushed away from base, de-rendering my dinos, as I then watched as a chaos manticore point blank blasted a melon PT. Talk about overkill. So I then spent some time searching for a fabled PT, and after failing to find one, I sent a request to the server to see if any of my patrons were online, and setting more pace to craft, I set out in search of a buffoon Pleurodon again. Flying through the snow, I again died to probably the same demonic Daedon as earlier. So after respawning and breeding more Maywings, I set off to collect my gear. And after luring the Daedons off my grave, I collected my stuff and decided to just end the day by simply heading home. Starting off day 61, I chased down and knocked out a fabled PT I'd been searching for. Having to deal with a spider, I fed the PT some kibble, then once tamed, landed away from the massive explosions nearby. While trying to climb my ladder, the dumb PT kept knocking me off, so I boarded up before heading up to base. Once up top, I moved all of the resources from flour and more and bored them up. They had done what they needed to, for now anyways. Now, here's the thing. For demonic and celestial kibble, you need a healthy supply of feathers. The best way, by far, to get feathers is really to tame a breeding pair of light or dark creatures and slaughter their babies. But since I didn't have a light nor dark creature yet, I decided to see if I could get my gachas to produce them. So after boiling up flour, I tossed them out and set them up to breed and produce, filling them chock full of stone before heading out to find some elementals. Instead, I found a buffoon Dodo. Remembering my punishment for failing the day 50 challenge, I decided to knock it out and tame it. Also knocking out a kamikaze Dodo, I tamed the buffoon but was short of the kibble needed for the kamikaze, so left it behind. And that's when an apex dragoff attacked, and after a few seconds with my chainsaw, fled. I ended off the day simply flying home on my Maywing. And so what's interesting about the buffoon Dodo, I came up with this. He poops eggs and then they spawn Nuka-Dodos. I should probably not have these by my base. And that's why my minions exploded and basically foundation wiped me. That's why. Oh no, my beds! Respawning, I ran into a Spirit Rex and knowing without my boots I couldn't outrun it, I simply waited for my death. After yet another respawn, I climbed the bridge and saw the damage. I attempted to jump down and land on my buffoon Dodo, but slipped and hit the ground. Yet another death to fall damage. So after respawning and making my way back, I did a little bit of parkour to get lower, jumped and barely surviving, managed to begin cleaning up my base. Of course, I had to boil up my gachas that were alive and wandering around, and after placing an architect bench, I began laying the foundation of my new base. After spending the entirety of the day building my base, some may ask, why did I bother putting up walls in Primal Fear? You see, the walls weren't for protection from damage, but to actually block the line of sight from wild creatures. They can't see you, they won't attack you, right? So after roofing off my gacha farm, I filled the gachas up with more stone so they can resume producing me more feathers. And then I started off the day by heading out with more ore and gathering stone. Gotta keep it in stock for these hungry gachas. And after avoiding certain death to a certain chaos dragon, I returned to base. Thank you, more ore. Your services are no longer required right now. And then hitching up my gachas, I placed some water and pestles as I needed a bunch of cementing paste. And checking my baby gachas, I found one that would produce fire feathers. So after removing the roof of my gacha farm, I tossed it in and set it to produce some crystals. And then remembering from one of my early videos, like literally some of the very first few videos on my channel that are really so bad you should not watch them, that gachas actually like plant species Y traps. So I set off in search of some seeds, and arriving in the desert I started to flop around when I was greeted by my nemesis of this playthrough, a demonic Daedon. Back to the desert, I went on a fresh mowing, collected my gear, and after seeing that I'd actually gotten some plant species Y seeds, I returned to base to plant them. Now that I had cementing paste, I replaced my item collector and cracked what gacha crystals I had, gaining me the much needed fire feathers in order to craft my first piece of advanced elemental kibble. Since the super spyglass I also had was really trash, I added the Bitto 2K binoculars, as it was time for an upgrade. Once I had my upgrade, I set out in search of a light or dark creature to tame, but not before creating an alliance, naming it Cries and Fear, and inviting Protorax and Amir to it. Flying around the ocean, I was targeted by a light parrot, and then my Maywing died to the parrot's burn. So I knocked it out and watched as it sank to the bottom of the ocean. And then back home, I grabbed a fresh Maywing from Protorax, since I hadn't yet fixed my ladder to my base, and returned to tame the light parrot. Diving into the depths, I tamed up the parrot as a little pleurodon wanted to snack on it and rose to the surface where we went home. Once at base, I was lucky enough to tame a male, while my neighbors above had a female. So we set them out to breed, and while the birds were having some fun, I made up a fabricator, generator, and some air cons to incubate the eggs, giving Amir the first male while I waited at base while they all bred. And while chilling at base, I decided it was probably a good idea to ball up the buffoon Dodo, you know, just in case. And then I gave Amir another male parrot, as they actually had the mutator and could swap genders, so he just let me keep the original female. And that way he could go off and progress instead of waiting for me while I did my breeding. I hitched the parrots to continue to breed them and took the male babies I had out, killed them and harvested them, gaining an amazing amount of feathers for now. Now that I had the feathers needed, I crafted up a batch of omega kibble and set out in search of one to tame up. But I spent so long searching, it was only at the end of the day did I finally find an omega spino. And I spent the morning of day 68 trying to knock out this omega spino, boiling up my Maywing so it didn't randomly die, and I was even chasing the Spino around only to get attacked by a corrupt Carno. And the Omega Spino I wanted decided to go and die to a demonic Parasaur. Unfortunate, but I mean free loot I guess. So I simply headed out to find another, stopping by the King Titan arena, as this is probably the best spot to take on bosses, as it's actually confined by the world barrier, so the Guardians can't just fly out and terrorize the map. And this is where I'll be doing most, if not all, of my boss fights. As I was searching for an Omega, I stopped for Stam on the little floating islands where I spotted someone's base. It was Lone Wolf. I guess he learned that living on the beach was not the vibe and moved up here. So I headed home to stock up on tranks, ending day 68 empty-handed. And waking up on day 69, I found an Omega Sarco near the swamp. Omega Sarco? For me? So after knocking it out and taming it up, I quickly balled it up, and not 5 seconds later, I found and tamed a second one. Guess the Ark gods were showing pity today. I even got a breeding pair, so I went home, bred them up, and cracked my gacha crystals before refilling my gachas. And since I had been streaming my playthrough to my Discord server Patreons, one of them had told me that the lunar biome was a good place to farm element. So boiling up more ore, I headed on over to begin farming. But then as I was farming, I got dismounted by a stupid void verb. And finally, after being fed up with it, I simply knocked it out so that more ore could kill it. And then running around, I attempted to jump the gatch from the islands only to spot a skeletonized Rex on the other side. And landing on the other island, I ran away as fast as more ore could waddle. Yep, that was enough lunar biome from me. So returning home, I balled up more ore and jumped from the bridge, 360 no-scope my grapple to the wall, successfully this time. As redemption complete, I began making the components to craft a primal tech giga. Short on a little polymer, I first headed to the Wastelands to kill off some corrupteds, went off to farming for bit. Kaitsu suggested I just go to the Penguin Island and slaughter them for polymer, since I had an amazing chainsaw. So teleporting to North Zone 1, I tossed out my Maywing and flew over, and landed on the Penguin Island where I tossed out more ore and killed all of the penguins. until finally with enough poly collected, I began teleporting home, but not before trying to kill a baby penguin before running out of gas. I wonder if that scarred the penguin for life, and maybe he'll grow up to be the next origin I face. So back at base, I spent the rest of the day crafting up the pieces for the Primal Tech Giga, and ending off the day spawning my masterpiece and crafting it a melee module. It was on the morning of day 71 when I was out roaming the beaches of my new Primal Tech Giga, hunting for that elusive Primal Megalon that patrolled the waters, but it was kinda slow. So I balled up the Giga and threw out my Maywing to hunt on foot. Well, webbed feet, I guess. When I kid you not, found the Primal Megalon immediately after taking flight. So after swapping back to my Giga, I began munching and munching at the giant shark, doing 30,000 damage a bite, and it was going to take a while to kill the beast. But that's when, I'm guessing the mate got bored of me biting, as it just swam onto shore, killing itself and giving me its soul. Like, I'll take an easy kill when I can get it. And then on the way home, I spotted a buffoon Lirapleurodon flying around and decided, you know what? I was gonna tame it. So testing the theory of trying to grapple to it after knocking it out, I headed it back to base, made up some parachutes and grappling hooks before returning to the bridge. Boarding up the Maywing, I leapt from the bridge, soared to the Lirapleurodon, fired my grapple, and yeah, couldn't grapple to it. Theory busted. So needing more hide, I went to harvest the turtle for hide, but ended up taming the defense unit that killed my Maywing. And then using the defense unit to harvest my Maywing for hide, I made up more parachutes. This time, I jumped off the bridge and soared over the Lirapleurodon, being able to access its inventory where I shoved in my kibble and tamed it up. I'd like to point out this is my new primal killer. And then flying around on the buffoon Lirapleurodon, I began raining down my Karuku missiles onto a celestial theory, even killing a wandering loot boss before spotting a primal raptor. And after killing the primal raptor, I was going to kill a demonic parasaur. That is, until I saw what level it was. 280! So grappling to the Lirapleurodon, I fired a trank arrow, and to my surprise, hit the parasaur. I think I need to find another primal because my corpse got eaten. And so eventually giving up on tranking the parasaur, I headed out in search of a new primal to kill as I needed more primal blood. And finding a meg, I began firing at it, and rocket after rocket, penguin after penguin. It was taking forever, so I decided to simply head home, strafing the beach along the way. Don't mind me, just making the area safe for any noobs starting out. And then arriving at base, I dropped what loot I had before making up my first bits of demonic, celestial, and fey kibble. So heading back out, this time on my Maywing, I went to go tame up that demonic parasaur. Setting up my 3 gateway high platform, I shot the parasaur to bring it over before I fell off, and parachuting down, I fired tranks on the way before ultimately dying to it. Respawning, I checked my smithy, and lo and behold, I still had a single origin arrow left. Grabbing it and a bow, I tossed out my Maywing to breed more backups, and then I tossed out my alpha defense unit and rolled over to the swamp, pulled it up, and ran in for a death run to hit the parasaur with my origin trank arrow. You got me! After respawning and heading back, the parasaur finally went to sleep, so I fed the kibble and finally had my first demonic. Boiling up the parasaur, I cleaned up my gates before heading home. And arriving at home, I decided to show off my magma sword to Ark Raptor, even accidentally setting my Maywing ablaze. And needing fiber to craft the saddle, I went out sickle in hand and harvested the bushes below my base. And then crafting the saddle, I equipped the parasaur before naming it Kittens. Setting off on Kitten's maiden voyage, I cleared the beach killing a buffoon ferox. That was a buffoon ferox. The revenge. And I simply ended the day running around farming creatures around the base, even including a fabled Bronto. And day 74 started off by me cracking all of the crystals my gachas have made before heading back out on Kittens to farm. Killing a wandering loot Dodo for blueprints as I headed out to the swamp to continue farming when I found another Omega Spino. So knocking it out, I tamed it up before continuing my rampage. Fighting and killing an origin Dodo where I gained a new piece of origin armor, a helmet, So returning home, I made up another origin arrow and tossed the Sarco into the soul terminal as I headed out in search of a fabled theory. Finding one shortly after leaving it, I prepped to knock it out on top of the hill it was on, and grabbing the aggro of the theory by shooting it since it fell off the hill, I decided to just chase it down and knock it out, feeding it some kibble as it tamed up, but that's when a primal raptor attacked, killing the theory. So I hopped on my Maywing and returned home to grab kittens. Searching for primals, I found an aloe on the mountain and swapped to kittens to take it out, and then heading back home where I restocked on potions and kibble before leaving again in search of an origin wyvern. Now, I was looking for a wyvern specifically because by killing it, it would unlock the tech transmitter techgram, allowing me to scan for creatures. So I spent the rest of the day killing primals as I found them, even while searching for the origin wyvern. After killing another primal shark, I was gliding around on my Maywing when I found an origin carno. Since I hadn't fought one yet, I swapped to kittens and took it out, as my current goal needed me to kill at least one of every origin, and that way I could use the tributes to take on either the Celestial Indom Emperor, or the Demonic Reaper Empress, or the Fey Karchar. And eventually getting the kill on the origin carno, I stayed on kittens and ran around killing everything I found, including a primal diabear, raptor, and megalodon. And now assuming everything goes right, I should be able to fight one of the guardians by day 80. So we'll see how it goes, as now it depends on my luck, RNG, and how many damn origins I could find, as you need to fight a ton of them in this mod. I ran around on kittens, continuing my slaughter of any primal and origin I could find, even getting stuck at one point, but with my Maywing easily escaped. So running around on the mountaintops, I stole a wyvern egg just because I could, and then running down the mountain where I destroyed a demonic Daedon, payback for the countless times I've died to one of them this playthrough. And that's when I learnt the bone meal engram, the taming food for skeletonized Rex. Might come in handy later on. And as I was running around the beach, I killed not one, not two, but 3 demonic Daedons at once. Why were these guys all packed up like that? And then as I was fighting stuff, kittens nearly died to a monga, but with skilled timing, I was able to proc a primal potion and that was too close. So I tried to teleport home only to get attacked by Dodo wyvern. So respawning, I headed out to the Maywing when a wall of red text popped up. Everything I left out at base had just gotten killed by a chaos Dodo wyvern. After kittens took out the Dodo wyvern, I balled up the Maywing and ran back as fast as kitten's little legs could run. And arriving at base, I saw what killed all my breeders. A mesh chaos Dodo wyvern inside of the structure my base was on. I tried to kill it but had no luck, so I carefully just dropped down into base, restocked on kibbles and tranks to end off the day. And now instead of searching blindly for an origin wyvern, I decided to go and make the summoner only to find I was short of an artifact. So off I went to a nearby cave using kittens to clear the area, where I killed a celestial RG for its soul before returning to the cave on foot and running to the ledge, tossing out kittens as I jumped down, and cleared the area before collecting the artifact of the Devourer. On the run up and out of the cave, a primal carno nearby died, so it was a cool free soul I guess, and then finally managing to make my way out of the cave where I headed home, and even spotting the Chaos Dodo wyvern, I began firing at her with kitten's explosion, but remembered quickly that a Dodo wyvern is immune to fire damage, so I left it be and just ran home. Once I returned to base, I crafted up the summoner for the origin wyvern, and now it was time as I glided over to the arena where I tossed out kittens and made sure she was stocked up with potions before summoning in the origin wyvern. The fight was easy. Just spam my attack, watch my health, and wait for the fire damage to do its work. And after a while, the origin wyvern was defeated. Tech transmitter unlocked, and I even got another piece of the origin armor, the chest piece. Now all I needed was pants. And now returning home with the knowledge unlocked, I went to make a tech replicator, but was short of some crystal and polymer. Crystal I could get from Skull Island, and polymer, well, I guess I'll be visiting the penguins again. Making sure to grab more ore, I headed to Skull Island and farmed for the crystal. I have enough crystal, 3,000, okay, yeah, that's enough. And then heading home, I dropped off the crystal before heading to Penguin Island. Flying by the swamp, I spotted a male demonic parasaur, so I decided to tame it while riding kittens. And hitting it with an origin arrow, I thought kittens would be able to tank it better, but I forgot that the origin arrow doubles the damage, as it killed us close to instantly. Returning, I made the alpha corner attacking the male parasaur torpor and allowing me to tame it up. Eat him. Eat him. Or explode him. That works too, I guess. And then as I waited for the parrot to clear the dodo before saddling him up and heading over to Penguin Island. Once I landed, I tossed the male parrot out before farming for polymer. 700 polymer? That should be enough. Let's kill these origins. And then spent the morning of day 80 fighting the origin penguins. Killing the first was simple enough, but the second it just wanted to swim around. Bro thinks he's Bob Ross, out here painting with damage numbers. And once the second one finally accepted its fate and died, I returned home and then checking the required materials needed to summon the demonic Reaper Empress. I made up the tech replicator and then placing it, I used it to make the tech transmitter and placed it outside my base. And scanning for demonics, I kinda wanted to use the terror birds, so I copied down the coordinates, restocked an arrows and headed out, and finding one at the edge of the redwoods, I chased it down and hit it with an origin trank. Running away was useless as it quickly caught up and killed me. So I respawned, made another Maywing saddle, grabbed a fresh one and headed out to tame up the terror bird, ending off the day with a brand new demonic. I started the morning of day 81 by scanning the map for a second demonic terror bird. Jotting down the coordinates, I headed out to tame it and landing near the redwoods first, my Maywing died and then as I tried to escape, I died to a phase saber-tooth. And after grabbing a fresh Maywing, I set out to collect my stuff. And I waited until the phase saber got far enough away before running in and collecting my gear. And then I flew off into the redwoods only to be immediately micro-raptored. And then being targeted by Ramshackle Loot Boss, I flew away to de-render everything and lose the aggro. And then when a Primal Raptor died, I'll always take a free soul. And checking the demonic terror bird. It's the wrong gender. I think I have a female as well, right? But mutator. And then drawing back my bow as I hit the flaming deathbird with an origin arrow before running for my life. It was fruitless as it quickly caught up and killed me. Doesn't matter, I connected with the arrow, so after respawning and even learning the mutator, I crafted a new Maywing saddle and headed back to the redwoods to tame up my bird. Once I fed it some kibble, it tamed up and we headed home. Checking what I needed to craft a mutator, I was once again short on polymer. And what was a good way to get poly? Carcanos. So after making a saddle, I teleported to Ab Island, arriving in a blaze of fire and death as I quickly mounted my demonic terror bird, taking out the origin dodo camping the spawn point as I was then pounced by a primal tech raptor. Death was avoided as my terror bird didn't appreciate the raptor's antics and killed it. And then running around the beach of the Ab Island, I got cocooned and was taking steady tick damage, but from what? I didn't know. So using the terror bird's attacks, the ticking stopped and I gained my first abyssal soul. Wandering around the Ab Island, I took out boss after boss, loot and origins before finally finding a crab to kill and harvest for its sweet polymer. And then after being reminded that Lost Island had beach dolphins that gave polymer, I teleported home to retrieve some gasoline. And then on a whim, I decided to see if the 300 polymer I'd collected was enough, and could you believe it? It was. So I crafted up the mutator, grabbed some element, and went outside. Look at me, guys. I have given in to all of you who have always begged that I use the mutator. And so tossing out the demonic terror bird. Alright, bud, time to strap the strap on you and call you Paul. Because now, you're gonna be a man. And then riding it inside, I quickly hitched the new male with my female and got them going. Waiting for the first egg to hatch and the baby to raise up, I checked to see if there are any demonic Reaper Empresses, as once I had an imprinted demonic terror bird, I would be targeting it for progression. So doing some housekeeping while the baby was raising up, I refilled my crop plots with poop to revive them, and even crafted some air cons as the eggs were too hot to incubate under their flaming hot parents. And eventually tossing the baby terror bird out, saddled it and gave it a max experience potion before naming it Chimkin, and then returning to the Ab Island. So I ran around searching for the demonic Reaper, looking around and for what seemed like forever, getting powered down around the island, I thought I'd found it. Come fight me, you stupid Reaper Queen, I am Chimkin. And then eventually killing the primal diabear, I found myself on top of the island. No, my greatest enemy, a cliff. I can't get up there. I can't jump that high. Oh, I thank you. Charge! And then entering the cave as I began clearing it of all life under the effects of radiation. Primal spinos, rock drakes, origin corners, and the thing I came here to fight, a demonic Reaper Empress. The battle was intense, blurs of explosions from me and the DRE. Origins dying as well as radiation affecting my vision, but I finally managed to kill it, gaining its soul, a saddle, and a summonable token. Once it was defeated and knowing I was going to need to farm Origin Spinos, I took out the 2 that were inside the cave when I realized I didn't get the actual loot from the DRE kill. So while searching for its loot bag, I stumbled across a weird Viking shrine, and walking over it, text popped up stating another piece of the puzzle falls into place. I'd like to point out I still don't have pants. I've killed a bunch of Origins, I have not gotten pants. And eventually exiting the rock drake cave, I teleported home, and arriving at base and wanting to get rid of the radiation, I had a surefire way to do so. So grabbing some right away from my tech replicator, just joking, I ate some organic poly and died. Respawning, I made up an origin arrow and headed to the arena on Chimkin. Using the summoner as I shot the DRE with an arrow and ran away. Even running into the water jet as it shot me into the air, where I waited for the DRE to pass out. You're not sleepy yet? You're running? And you're out. Demonic terror bird superiority. Feeding it the kibble, it tamed up. Chimkin. I have a feeling you're replaced already. So boiling up Chimkin, I mounted the DRE and headed home, killing everything in the Wasteland, and I stood in the water when I realized my demonic Reaper was actually getting massive amounts of torpor applied to it because of a toxic meg. No, that was actually kind of impressive how much torpor was getting applied. I think this is the slowest demonic Reaper Empress I've ever gotten. I usually get them a lot sooner. But with the demonic Reaper acquired and my next progression being the Chaos Guardian, I knew what I had to do. I scanned for any artifact of the great on the map, as these special bosses are key in the Primal Fear playthrough. So when you kill them, they drop artifacts, which are used to craft origin summoners. So teleporting to West Zone 2, I arrived, but my demonic Reaper didn't. So I tossed out Chimkin and set out to find the artifacto, killing an origin Dodo before eventually finding it near the obelisk, and the fight was quick, and after dismounting Chimkin, I collected 3 artifacts. That's 3 origin summoners I could craft. After killing an origin Spino, I teleported north, searching for the second artifacto. Eventually finding and killing it, I tried to collect the artifacts, but couldn't since I was silly and didn't go home first. So I simply headed home and checked what all I needed to craft the Guardian Summoner. Short of some Celestial Souls, I took my Reaper out for a Celestial killing spree, and running through the swamp I found some Celestial Theories, a Spino, even taking out a Primal Aloe, and nothing was safe from the might of my Reaper. Stumbling across some structures in the swamp, I jumped down to see another artifact, so grabbing it up like a loot golem, hey, you gotta take them when you can. I continued running through the area, even killing the Forest Titan and even more Primals. I even got revenge on some demonic monkeys, farming the rest of the day, ending off with the Celestial Rex kill. And then as I was farming, Protoax had somehow died inside of the Rock Drake cave while fighting a demonic Reaper. Do I have my Terror Bird on me? I do. I'll come help you kill the Reaper Empress, free soul. So fighting my way to Ab Island, I pumped a level into my demonic Reaper when I got confused for a second. Did it just say demonic Reaper Empress has been defeated? What? And then after being bullied by a monka, an overpowered phoenix that I have no clue what tier it is, elemental or demonic, I eventually arrived at the Rock Drake cave. Tossing out Chimkin, I entered and began fighting the demonic Reaper, killing it, allowing Protoax to enter to regain his stuff. I then exited the cave where I balled up Chimkin and began fighting my way home, even fighting a Celestial Diabear along the way. Eventually stopping on the beach, I was checking my inventory to see how many souls I'd collected when I died out of nowhere to a Celestial's attack. So I headed back to collect my stuff in my demonic Reaper. And arriving back, I saw I was getting munched on by an Origin Carno, so I whistled for it to attack, but not before taking the Celestial's attack head on. That's what it was. And then grabbing a fresh terror bird, I made it a saddle, named it Nugget, and headed out to collect my stuff. Teleporting in. No! Oh, the most clutch mount in the history of mounts. Face to face with a spirit Dodo, but clutching up as I mounted Nugget before it could self-destruct. I headed to my demonic reaper where we killed the origin Carno. What are the chances you gave me pants? But not getting pants from the drop, as I transferred my demonic's inventory to Nugget before going home and then back home where I dropped Nugget's inventory. I was told no. Let's go to the snow. So teleporting to the snow on my reaper, began farming for celestial souls, killing a celestial Yudi before heading to the snow cave as maybe there'll be some dire bears inside. Entering the cave as I immediately got dismounted by a Prolovia. And then as I was clearing the cave of everything living. Look, it's another one of the totem things. I guess that was a Fjordo addition to the map. Sweet. I then collected the artifact of the strong before making my way out of the cave. See this shit I have to put up with, dude. You're lucky. You got the nice end of this bargain. You died. You don't have to deal with these people. And making my way to the exit. We're done here, Chimkin. Let's go. So I mounted my reaper and continued my search for celestials. Die, Tortuga. Killing off Tortuga just for the sake of it since minions are a pain to deal with. I eventually found and killed an Origin Direbear. Deciding to check if the Rock Drake cave had anything inside, so I entered them Chimkin but was cut off by the server Dino wipe. So I simply chose to pack up my things and went home. And then checking what I needed in order to summon the Celestial Indom Emperor. I crafted up the missing Origin summoners and headed to the arena. Tossed down by Reaper, I named it SpongeBob before spawning in and killing the Origins. Pants! I see pants! And equipping the pants I got from the Origin Rex, no longer would I have to run around pantsless. I headed home to craft the Indom Summoner. As it's been a while since I last completed Primal Fear, I checked through all the new bosses added. Okay, let's start at the beginning. So, first off, there's additional origins. Then there is the Fae Karchar, Artifactor the Descended, Dodo the Summon, Skynet the Mechanical Monstrosity, Dodo the Dodo. That's actually kind of a funny name. It's Dodo the Dodo. Tier 6, there's Indominus Rematch and Empress Rematch. And then tier 7 is now Dodo's Revenge and Nova's Revenge. But for now, my target was the Indom, so I crafted its summoner as I headed to the arena. And then on the morning of day 90, it was time. This was going to be a one-on-one battle of SpongeBob versus the Celestial Indominus Emperor. And then not long after summoning it, the Celestial Indom Emperor was dead. Oh yes. I just got the Boots of Speed. And equipping my new boots and taking a victory lap before heading home where I made up an Origin Arrow. And then returning to the arena where I used the Tameable Summon, hit the Indom while falling with an Origin Arrow, and then after being chased and nearly dying, it eventually went to sleep. That's when I shoved my kibble in, and after it tamed up, named it Patrick. So, the Indominus Emperor is kind of like the support, and the Reaper Empress is like the DPS. The reason why this guy's like support is because of this attack. That's the wrong attack. It's because of this attack. Whoop. Everything die, flyers get grounded. So since the Indom was more support than DPS, I pumped all of its levels into health. And then heading home where I used Patrick's height to my advantage and jumped onto my platform, balling her up. After farming the rest of day 91, I finally had enough souls for my first Guardian. I just needed some more origin tributes. So heading to the arena on SpongeBob, I first killed an origin Dodo before entering, and then spawning in first the flies, the origin Argent and Wyvern, and then the smaller land origins, the Carno, the Diabear, the Kairuku, and the Raptor. And finally, there was the big boys, the Spino and the Rex. There we go, a full set of origins defeated. And then crafting the Fey Carcharodontosaurus Summoner, a new tier 3 boss added to the mod, and arriving back at the arena, I summoned in the Carcho and instantly killed it. I really didn't expect it to be that easy, I'm not gonna lie, it didn't even attack. So parking SpongeBob at the entrance of the arena, I spawned in the Carcho, hit it with an origin arrow and ran for it. The Carcho, being a lot faster than the Indom, caught up quickly and munched the life out of me. So after returning to the arena on a mairing, I grabbed my stuff. Bros just like me had a snack, immediately went to go nap. Fed it some Fey kibble. Get it? It's Fey. Because I had the exact number of kibble I needed. And then named it Fate to end of the day. Sadly in Fate, I ran around. So usually, Celestials and Demonics, when they are powered up, they take no fall damage. He took fall damage from that tiny little fall. And then boiling up SpongeBob, I spent the entire day testing out Fates, and after some extensive murdering of everything around, here are my final thoughts. It's pretty strong. He's pretty cool. Feel like he's not the strongest DPS, and he seems too slow whatever he's fighting, so it's kind of like a niche. So things will struggle to get away from him, but he's very quick and he's probably the fastest of the Emperor or Empresses. And then day 93 was here, and I'd finally farmed enough to craft the Chaos Guardian Summoner. Ignore the fact that it's already like 20 days later than I originally planned to. So making sure SpongeBob had all the potions, I moved my more important gear into a separate smithy to organize a bit, before heading into the arena. So after preparing myself mentally, I spawned in the Chaos Guardian. 1.7 billion health, let's go. The fight where you can never stand still even for a second. The fight started brutally, sending out explosive spines to the Chaos Guardian and it returning with giant lava balls of death. That's me dead. Oh, no. I got caught with an attack but managed to survive, and running around as I noticed I didn't ball up my Maywing. Oh, there's a Maywing over there! Save the Maywing! And then getting stuck by the Guardian, I took an attack face on, and sadly, SpongeBob and I died. Respawning, I grabbed a Maywing, made up another pair of binoculars to see how much health I took off. Did I see that correctly? 1.6 billion still? So I grabbed my stuff and headed home to regroup and re-gear. Grabbing Patrick as well as a bunch of terror birds. I maxed Patrick's levels, pumping it all into health before returning to the arena. Tossing out my DPS birds once arriving, the fight was on. My birds being wiped out almost immediately. Let me free from these confines of your evil minions! And getting trapped inside of the minions as the boss wasn't good, but luckily I wasn't dying. See, the unfortunate part is I can't throw down more demonic terror birds off of the back of the Indom, which I thought I could. I was tanking the damage, dealing back my own, but I'd only whittled down only 1 million health to the boss when it got grounded and fell down to the ledge. And for some reason it stopped being aggro onto me, allowing me to toss out a single terror bird before it caught wind and came back to the fight. We were fighting, and as much as we were no longer dying, I just couldn't do the DPS needed to kill the boss. And that's when I decided to put out a call to my patrons to see if they would be able to help me fight this chaos beast. The first to answer the call was Reaper, the Unknown, arriving on his demonic thorny dragon, and together we started to take on the beast, me grounding it while Reaper fired his thorny dragon's quills. Checking the boss's health, we managed to drop it to 1.4 billion, another 100 million down. The problem with this boss is the longer it takes, the laggier it gets. 1.3, baby! And getting hit by a direct attack, I quickly consumed a health potion, and then even called in more patrons as I waited for Protorax to join in on the fight. 1.08 billion, we've almost broken down to less than a bill. Usually I defeat the Guardians by day 75, but only getting to start the fight on day 93. It currently being day 96 and we're still fighting the Chaos Guardian. Even having to call in backup shows just how hard the server has been. Like, it's not a battle of damage, it's a battle of can your PC survive? We steadily dealt damage as we waited on Protorex to arrive. I'm just waiting to see this like Karchar running in from the distance. And like a rampaging carnivore, he arrived on his fey Carcharodontosaurus Emperor. Another DPS added as the fight was as intense as ever, but sadly the Guardian targeted Protorex, and after taking a direct attack, the fey Karchar was no more. So pulling the Chaos Guardian away so Protorex collect his grave, he tossed out a demonic Mesopithecus and continued the fight. And here comes Protorex again with the monkey. The fight got so bad, my frames dropped to 11 FPS. And that's when Reaper shouted a health check. 688 million to go. The DPS were doing their job, me grounding the giant lizard as I called out to the health check. 300 mil, and it was a final stretch grounding the Chaos Guardian as it flew over my Indom like a skater grinding the rail. Oh, the Thorny's in the ground. Thorny is in the ground. He became a Fasolasuchus. And another health check. 240 mil. It's only now got slightly more health than an Origin Dodo thinks it has. We continued fighting as Protorex called out that it had 140 million. And after a full 5 days of fighting, the Chaos Guardian finally perished. Jumping off Patrick, I collected the loot from the corpse before reconnecting to fix my FPS. I was on the way home when I noticed how much damage Protorex Monkey did. How much damage did the monkey do? Okay, yeah, the fake Archer's useless. So in honor of SpongeBob's sacrifice, I renamed Fate to Squidward, placed a gravestone and gave a salute to SpongeBob, the spiciest sponge around. With only 2 days left, I decided to go and tame a skeletonized Rex. So checking what I needed to craft its bone meal, I needed measure berries. So down I went on a mowing, gathered the bushes around, and of course it wouldn't be my video if I wasn't collecting fiber at the end. So once the fiber was collected, I now only needed feathers. So tossing out some light parrots, I fueled up my chainsaw and slaughtered them. And then crafting the bone meal, I was reminded that the skeletonized Rexes are immune to origin tranks. So instead I crafted up a bunch of primal trank arrows. And then it was the morning of day 99. I was hungry, so grabbing some prime cooked meat, I made sure to chow down, and then scanning for a skeletonized Rex, I headed out to the mowing, eventually finding it as I swapped onto Chimkin and started knocking it out. Using the Celestial Rex's slowing effect to my advantage, I ran up the mountain, clearing the area before checking the torpor. And of course the demonic Hyaenodon had to make this tame interesting, dropping the Rex's health to almost nothing. So I headed back to base to restock on tranks, even killing the Primal Mega outside for its blood. There you go, there's another 108 arrows. Oh, that's tamed. And climbing up to my base as I crafted up the tranks. So flying down to the beach, my mowing died to a Chaos Dodo. I had to just end off the video with one more final mowing dying. Oh well, Chimkin, you're up. So hopping onto Chimkin as I continued back to the Rex, dealing with Fjordhawks. And I went to kill an Alpha Manticore but died. So much for rider protection. Returned to where I decided to see a Reaper was there and had cleared the Manticore out. So grabbing my stuff and mounted Chimkin and searched for the Rex. Oh hi, there he is. And then I checked its torpor before raining down arrows until it finally went to sleep. Nap time now, little Rexy. So feeding it the bone meal and a tame helper, I now had a skeletonized Rex. Heading home after boiling it up, ending the day with a success. And then it was the final day. Day 100. I crafted up a saddle, tossed it on the skeletonized Rex, and leveled it up with the help of a max XP potion. Okay, let's level up your health. Go to 15, maybe. Yeah. So testing out the damage on a fire Leuropterodon, I spent the rest of the day simply running around, clearing the area of life. Look, there's everything that has life. Now it doesn't. And then in the Wasteland, I decided to defend an OSD. It's a Primal Spino. No, he's not dead yet. He's a little bit tankier than the rest. Now he's gone. And then, well, I think that's it. That's the very end of my 100 days Primal Fear. If you've enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. And if you want to see 200 days, get this video to 10,000 likes and we'll do it. But we won't just do it. We'll come back for Primal Fear hard mode and complete 100% of it. That would be taming every single demonic, celestial and fae. Because I mean, I'm gonna need some stuff to do in between fighting these incredibly challenging bosses as I work my way to getting to day 200.